March 2016. A heavy atmosphere enveloped the drying Clearfield Lake in central Pennsylvania. The glint of rusted metal emerging from the black mud left the construction crew stunned because it was something no one was supposed to find after more than 2 decades. Central, we've located a submerged vehicle at the bottom of the lake. We need state police and forensics immediately. The supervisor's voice echoed through the walkie-talkie, reverberating into the empty space along the lake shore. What began as a routine maintenance project had now become something entirely different, something that could answer the questions that had haunted Lock Haven for 21 years. A 1978 Chevrolet Nova frame buried in the mud, and the VIN matched the car belonging to 3 young men who vanished in the summer of 1995. The car that Evan Carver, Daryl Lawson, and Mike Jensen had driven on their final night. For more than 2 decades, their disappearance had been nothing but unanswered questions. 3 young healthy guys who left the auto shop to go night fishing, then vanished from the face of the earth. 3 empty chairs at every family dinner. 3 bedrooms left untouched. No one daring to disturb them. Before we continue this shocking story, take a second to subscribe and like the video. Your support helps bring forgotten cases like this back into the light and ensures you won't miss the next stories. The discovery at Clearfield Lake was not just the end of a missing persons case. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose decades-old secrets buried in this small Pennsylvania community. Because when authorities finally identified the suspect and made the arrest, it wasn't a drifter or an unknown criminal. It was someone the town knew, someone they trusted, someone who had lived among them for more than 20 years, carrying this horrifying secret. The Lock Haven case is not just a mystery solved. It is proof of the perseverance of families who never gave up, of investigators who refused to let the file gather dust, and of modern forensic science that gave a voice back to victims silenced for too long. It is also the story of a community torn apart. When the 3 young men disappeared in 1995, suspicion spread like darkness through Pine Hollow Forest. Neighbors began whispering. Trust slowly collapsed. The cracks simmering beneath the surface of that small American town would shatter when the truth was finally revealed after 21 years. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was always very close. The main suspect appeared right from the early days of the investigation, but slipped through the net. For years, this person attended community memorials for the missing young men, looked their parents in the eye, and maintained an innocent facade while hiding unimaginable secrets. Where are you watching this video from? Leave your location in the comments below. Tonight, we will go back to the summer of 1995, follow the decades-long search, and witness the stunning breakthrough that closed one of Pennsylvania's most mysterious cold cases. This is a story of loss, perseverance, deception, and justice delayed, but not denied. The afternoon of July 29, 1995, the town of Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, drifted quietly in the stifling late summer heat. The hum of machinery from the Mill Hall Auto Shop echoed steadily in the narrow alley near Route 220. Inside, 22-year-old Evan Carver wiped his hands on an oily rag, finishing his shift. 23-year-old Daryl Lawson leaned against the doorframe, lighting a cigarette, while 20-year-old Mike Jensen, the youngest of the group, fumbled with packing up the toolbox. They had been close friends since high school, worked together at the shop, and were accustomed to the slow pace of life in the town, where people called each other by name, and no secret lasted too long. That evening, the 3 planned to drive Evan's 1978 dark green Chevrolet Nova, a car that had changed hands many times, paint chipped and patchy, but the engine still strong, out to Ferensville Lake for fishing and beer. Around 8:30 p.m., they left the shop, stopped at the convenience store on Main Avenue to buy ice, cigarettes, and a 6-pack of beer. Evan drove, Daryl rode shotgun, and Mike sat in the back, holding the tackle box. En route 120 heading toward Teadaton Forest, they played rock music from an old cassette tape. Windows down, hot wind rushing in, carrying the smell of scorched grass and pine resin. Around 10:10 p.m., the car stopped at Cole's Service gas station, a small station 5 miles west of town. The night clerk remembered them clearly because they were the last customers. Evan asked to fill the tank, check the tires, and buy 2 bottles of water. They laughed loudly, mentioning they were heading to the lake to cool off. The clerk watched as the Nova pulled away, red taillights glowing as they faded into the darkness. The direction they took was the narrow road leading to Pine Hollow, a rarely traveled forest branch with rough gravel connecting to the Ferensville Lake area. That night, there was no moon. Thick fog clung to the windshield, patches of mist swirling between the pine rows. The wind carried moisture from the Susquehanna River, making the air oppressive. Around 10:45 p.m., a few residents near Pine Hollow heard a sound echoing from the forest, like an engine revving or metal crashing. Then silence. No one paid attention. In this area, nighttime hunting shots or kids' homemade fireworks weren't unusual. As the clock approached midnight, Route 120 returned to quiet, only the yellow lights of Cole's service station glowing on the treetops, reflecting on the wet road. The next morning, the sky was overcast, light drizzle falling. Evan's mother realized her son hadn't come home. The bed was still made, wallet and watch left on the table. The Lawson and Jensen families saw no sign of their sons either. They called each other, then drove around Ferensville Lake, looking for clues. By 9:10 a.m., after checking the auto shop with no news, the 3 families went together to the Clinton County Sheriff's Office to report that Evan Carver, Darrell Lawson, and Mike Jensen had gone missing along with the dark green Chevrolet Nova. The first dispatcher was a young officer named Randall, who quickly jotted down the basics and transferred the call to the sheriff's office. Thomas Hale, 47, the county sheriff at the time, had been at the station early after morning patrol. He knew all 3 young men, kids who grew up in the same neighborhood, so when he heard their names, his expression changed immediately. Hale stepped out of his office, invited the families into the small ground floor meeting room, where a ceiling fan spun slowly and white light filtered through frosted windows. He took a blank file folder and wrote the first heading in thick letters: Missing Persons #950729. Each family member took turns recounting. Evan left home around 8:30 p.m., saying he was going fishing at Ferensville Lake. Darrell went along, bringing a small toolbox. Mike texted his mother he'd be home before midnight. They were all wearing jeans and t-shirts, no luggage. Hale asked about the car, and Mrs. Carver described it clearly. 1978. Chevrolet Nova, dark green Pennsylvania plate 5, B2197. Rear door scratched, left headlight dim. He noted every detail carefully, then ordered a check at Cole's service station, the last known sighting. The desk clerk entered the information into the system: 3 males, Lock Haven residents, out of contact over 12 hours, likely traveling in personal vehicle, estimated direction toward Pine Hollow. In the office, Hale spread a large topographic map on the table, drew the route in red from Mill Hall to Ferensville, connecting to Pine Hollow Forest and Clearfield Lake. He called state police in Williamsport to report the missing persons case and request helicopter support if needed. An emergency meeting was held right after. Hale assigned 4 county deputies, 2 familiar with mountain terrain, 2 handling Route 120, plus 4 local volunteers from previous rescue teams. Tasks were clear: sweep the entire area from Cole's service station to Ferensville Lake shore, check turnoffs, dirt roads, and water points. He required everyone to log coordinates, photograph any unusual traces, and check in via radio every 30 minutes. Outside, dark clouds hung low, wind carrying moisture from the Susquehanna River, making the air heavy. At 10:20 a.m., Hale signed off on opening the official file and ordered the search to begin. 2 patrol cars, a pickup truck, and a rescue jeep started up in the yard. He stepped onto the porch, looked at the wet road glistening in the early light, then turned back to tell the clerk, "If anyone calls saying they saw the green Nova, put them straight through to me." The convoy rolled out of downtown, heading west toward the forest. The post-rain air was thick and damp, smells of earth and pine resin drifting along the hillsides. Sheriff Thomas Hale sat in the passenger seat of the lead jeep, holding a plastic-covered topographic map. The other 3 vehicles, 2 patrol cars and the rescue pickup, followed, each loaded with gear, ropes, markers, cameras, and radios. Passing through Ferensville, he signaled to stop and observe the lake area, where the main paved road branched into uneven terrain toward Pine Hollow. The Susquehanna River flowed slowly, reflecting the silver-gray sky. Hale noted the weather: limited visibility due to low fog, high humidity, soft ground. Deputies spread out along both sides of the road, looking for tire tracks or skid marks that might indicate a vehicle left the pavement. In the thin mud near the grass edge, the crime scene deputy found several faint parallel tire impressions, uneven depth, heading toward the forest. Hale knelt, touched the ground, estimating compression. He believed the tracks were less than 48 hours old. He ordered photos, measurement of the track width, and marking coordinates on the map in red. Ahead, the road narrowed, gravel mixed with dirt, flanked by tall oaks and maples. Insect sounds buzzed steadily, occasionally broken by crow calls. The rescue team used reflective paint to mark 3 suspicious points. The first curve, 400 meters from the main road, a low muddy area on the right, and a wide grassy spot near a stream, where a side trail led deeper into the forest. At the first spot, they found a few broken beer bottle shards, surfaces dusted fine, no fresh signs. Hale had them logged and bagged as evidence item 01. The second spot, the muddy low area, had overlapping old tracks mostly from trucks and previous hunting season vehicles. No small car-sized tracks matching a passenger vehicle. The third spot was near the narrow stream, water flowing over shiny pebbles. A volunteer spotted faint tire marks mixed in moss, rubber tread pattern different from police vehicles. Hale compared it to the Chevrolet Nova tire profile in the file, size roughly matched but not clear enough to confirm. He ordered photos from 4 angles, noting date, time, weather conditions. Each photo was logged on film roll 04, labeled Pine Hollow East Trail. As the sun rose higher, fog lifted, smells of rotting wood and wet grass grew stronger. The group took a short break by the stream, drank water, and quickly shared findings. No one found other physical signs, no paint chips, no collision marks, no oil leaks. Hale quietly stared at the dirt road stretching ahead, dappled light filtering through the canopy. He used binoculars to scan the opposite slope, noting complex terrain, old hunter trails, several rock hollows wide enough to hide a car. He ordered another circle marked on the map, half-mile radius around the 3 suspicious points, for the next search phase. Around 1 p.m., the team regrouped at the Ferensville Junction, loaded all soil samples and photos into temporary evidence bins. Before leaving, Hale wrote in the field report, surveyed area, Ferensville, Pine Hollow, steep terrain, soft ground, 3 suspicious points marked, no direct collision evidence found. Those lines closed the first field sweep phase and marked the moment the investigation had to shift away from the forest. That same afternoon, with field leads temporarily stalled at indirect traces, Sheriff Thomas Hale and Lieutenant Rogers returned to town to collect witness statements. First stop was Cole's service station on Route 120, about 4 miles from the Pine Hollow turnoff. The old station had just 2 pumps and a small tin-roofed store. Owner Raymond Cole, 55, was the only one on duty the night of July 29th. He greeted the officers cautiously, removed his oily apron, wiped his hands on a rag, and invited them inside. Hale opened his notebook, explained the case, and asked directly, "Did you see 3 young men in a dark green Chevrolet Nova on the night of July 29th?" Cole nodded almost immediately. He recounted that around 10:10 p.m. a green car pulled in, and 3 guys got out. The driver, tall with dark blonde hair, asked to fill the tank and check tire pressure. He recognized them as regulars who had stopped for gas a few times before. While he pumped, the other two browsed the store, buying beer and a bottle of water. He spoke evenly, saying they were laughing loudly, playing music from the car, no signs of being drunk or causing trouble. When Hale asked which way they left, Cole said the car turned toward Pine Hollow, the forest road connecting through to Clearfield. He remembered because he watched the taillights disappear into the dark and heard the engine echo through the trees. Hale noted the exact time, 10:10 p.m., location Cole's service. He asked for a detailed car description. Cole confirmed it was a two-door dark green paint, left headlight dimmer than the right. The description matched the family's perfectly. Before leaving the station, Hale ordered photos of the entire area, measurements from the pump to the main road, and GPS coordinates as a reference point. He also asked to see the night's sales log for the matching transaction, but Cole said no receipts were kept for cash payments. Hale just nodded and noted no receipt, cash. From the station, they went to the old Johnson Trucking Company warehouse, where container trucks often passed this stretch at night. Driver Gary Nielsen, 39, said that on July 29 he was driving a load from Clearfield back to Lock Haven around 10:30 p.m., passing a curve about 2 miles from Cole's. He saw a dark-colored car ahead moving slowly, then turning onto the side road into Pine Hollow Forest. Nielsen remembered clearly because the car's taillights were uneven, left one dimmer, and the license plate reflected weakly. He didn't encounter any other vehicles for several minutes after. Hale showed him the Nova photo from the file, and Nielsen said it was very similar, possibly the same car. The sheriff recorded the full statement, marking 10:30 p.m. as the last time the car was seen moving. Back at the county station that evening, Hale spread the map on the table, connecting the 2 points, Cole's service at 10:10 and the Pine Hollow turn at 10:30. The distance fit perfectly for a slow drive over the gravel hill section. He measured with a ruler, marked the suspect area in red, and noted possible last seen. The other officers reviewed the reports in turn. Cole's statement confirmed the three left the station toward the forest. Nielsen's reinforced the route. No other witnesses in surrounding areas, and no accident reports that night. As darkness fell completely, Hale closed the file for the first day's work. He looked out the window at the streetlights, reflecting on the calm river. The three names on the missing persons #950729 report were still fresh ink, and in the notes section, he added one short line, final movement time frame, 22:10, 22:30. Confirmed route from Cole's service to Pine Hollow turn. When returning to the county headquarters late at night, Thomas Hale and the officers held an emergency meeting to compile the witness results. The Clinton County topographic map was spread out on the conference table under the pale white fluorescent lights. Hale used a ruler and red marker to connect the 2 points identified that day: Cole's service gas station and the location where driver Nielsen saw the vehicle turn onto the side road leading to Pine Hollow. The straight line between those two markers formed the southern boundary for the search area, with the rest extending north to Lake Ferensville and west to the Clearfield area. He decided to circle a 5-mile radius from the Pine Hollow turnoff point, a range wide enough to cover the dense forest, hillsides, and small stream branches. The officer in charge of technical matters spread out an additional 124,000 scale topographic map, noting elevations, flow directions, and hunters' trails. Hale divided the area into 3 main zones: the Pine Hollow Forest Road, the Susquehanna Riverbank area, and the Ferensville Lake Strip. He pointed to each zone on the map, assigning specific tasks. The first team, consisting of 2 police officers and 2 volunteers, would handle the forest road, starting from the curve where Nielsen saw the vehicle, proceeding deep into the forest to the rocky hills in the north. The second team, led by Lieutenant Rogers, would cover the riverbank, scanning the eastern shore and the stream branches flowing out from the forest. The third team, made up of experienced divers, would check the lake and the still water areas around Ferensville. Each group carried their own map, walkie-talkies, flashlights, and reflective marking stakes. Hale emphasized, maintain contact every 30 minutes, report coordinates and movement status. If you find mechanical traces like tire marks or glass fragments, mark them with paint and take photos. After completing the assignments, he stood up and checked the clock. It was just past 8 in the evening. Outside, the sun had set, with only a faint red glow lingering at the foot of the hills. He ordered the entire team to take a short rest, with deployment to begin simultaneously the next morning. That night, in his office, he continued working for nearly 2 more hours, reviewing the map data. The dense red markings around the Pine Hollow area caught his attention. This was not just an ordinary forest, but a complex network of trails, with many dead ends and landslide-prone slopes. He added more landslide warning symbols and prioritized zones. When Hale left headquarters, the clock was nearing 10:30. He went home and slept fitfully, his mind still on the dark expanses of forest outside. Early the next morning, as fog still blanketed the valley thickly, the 3 search teams simultaneously departed from the Clinton County headquarters as planned. En Route 120, police vehicles turned on their headlights, reflective signals flashing through the thick white mist. Sheriff Thomas Hale's team led the way, consisting of 2 officers, 2 volunteers, and a Pennsylvania State Police K-9 handler. The German Shepherd dog named Ranger, specially trained for human scent detection, was led out first. The convoy entered the forest via the Pine Hollow Trail, a narrow dirt road full of gravel, flanked by dense oak and pine trees. High humidity made the ground soft, with tires leaving deep ruts. Each group stopped at the points marked the previous day to begin the search. Hale directed the check of the first area, a low slope near a creek, where faint tire marks had been spotted during the survey. He had rope laid out to cordon off the area, used reflective paint to mark boundaries, then released the dog to sniff around. Ranger moved slowly, nose to the ground, circling each tree trunk. After 15 minutes, the dog stopped at a large maple tree, barked briefly, then moved on. Hale bent down to check and found only a scrap of rotted paper, possibly blown there by the wind. He shook his head and signaled to continue. The group moved deeper north, where the terrain was rougher and denser. The walkie-talkie crackled. Lieutenant Rogers from the Riverbank team reported nothing noteworthy, just a few old truck tire marks on the mudflat. Hale noted the information, marking the time at 9:45 a.m. As sunlight began piercing through the canopy and the fog lifted, the forest revealed alternating patches of light and shadow. The group moved slowly, eyes scanning the ground for signs of struggle, fabric scraps, cans, or any unusual objects. Beneath the dry leaves, they saw only twisting roots and a few rotted wood pieces. Near noon, the rescue team reported finding a charred rubber strap about 20 meters off the trail. Hale approached, picked it up with gloved hands. The shiny black color suggested it could be a drive belt or rubber gasket, but the age was hard to determine. He requested photos, coordinates measured, then sealed it. As the sun beat down stronger, the team took a break by a dry creek, eating cold sandwiches and coffee from thermoses. No one spoke much, forest bird calls mixed with the faint sound of trickling water. Hale looked around, noting elevation and wind direction, knowing that human or fuel scents could be dispersed by the wind. In the early afternoon, the team continued into the Ferensville Trail section, where it intersected with old hunters' paths. The ground here was drier, scattered with gravel and fallen trunks. Ranger led the way, occasionally barking lightly at strange scents, but then turning away. A volunteer pointed to a gravel strip, a few small skid marks, like a vehicle turning sharply, but too old, eroded by rain. Hale bent down to check, confirming they were from the previous hunting season, with much wider tires than a passenger car. He had photos taken for records, but did not mark it as evidence. By late afternoon, they had covered nearly the entire assigned area, sweeping the main trail and 2 side branches. No signs of struggle, no fabric scraps or mechanical objects indicating a collision. Just piles of dry leaves, loose rocks, and animal tracks. At the final stopping point near the forest edge, Hale gathered the team to review the inventory. An officer read out the list of items collected that day: charred rubber strap, soil samples, 4 scene photos, no biological traces. Hale nodded silently, writing a brief note in the duty log. No signs of struggle or collision. Before leaving the forest, he paused on the slope, looking down at the hazy water far below, where the late afternoon light cast the last glimmers on Lake Clearfield's surface. In that moment, all sounds seemed to fade, leaving only the wind rustling through the leaves and the fading engine noise as the teams gradually left the valley. That very silence made Hale realize that if the answer wasn't on the ground, it was very likely hidden beneath the dark water. On the morning of August 1st, 1995, the search operation entered its 3rd day with a pivotal decision. The focus shifted entirely from the forest to the water areas. After 2 days of scanning Ferensville, Pine Hollow without any specific traces, Sheriff Thomas Hale officially mobilized the Pennsylvania State Rescue Dive Team to check the entire Lake Clearfield and the Pine Hollow stream running through the valley. That morning, thick clouds and low fog covered the lake surface, the water gray and murky, reflecting dim light like metal. The rescue team of 6 brought 2 inflatable boats, an old analog sonar machine, diving gear, anchor lines, and an underwater camera. Hale was present on the shore with Lieutenant Rogers, coordinating communications via walkie-talkie. He instructed the divers to split into 2 groups, the first to survey the lake bed from north to south in 3 parallel strips, the second to follow Pine Hollow Stream, a narrow but deep branch connecting to the lake in the southeast section. The technical leaders mounted the sonar on the boat, checking scan frequency and depth display. This analog machine showed images only on a monochrome scan screen, making details hard to distinguish, but it was the best available at the time. Around 8:30 a.m., the group began test dives. Water temperature measured just 58 degrees F, cold and murky, with underwater visibility less than 2 meters. 2 divers went down first, carrying signal lines and lights, diving along the shoreline areas. They moved slowly, probing each depression, occasionally sending short signals when finding small metal objects. Those were mostly beer cans, tin boxes, and rusted iron scraps. From the shore, Hale watched the flickering sonar screen, scattered bright dots appearing and disappearing. Near noon, the sonar recorded an unusual return in the lake center, at about 28 feet deep. The second dive team was directed to the spot, dropped anchor, and began diving. After nearly 40 minutes, they surfaced with several bent metal pieces tangled in an old net. When rinsed of mud, it turned out to be a pickup truck door frame, silver paint peeling, no VIN visible. Hale had it brought to shore for re-examination. A technician measured dimensions, compared to missing vehicle data in the area, and concluded it was remnants of a 1972 Ford Ranger reported missing 10 years prior, unrelated to the current case. Still, he clearly noted the find in the scene log, numbering it vehicle frame #1, unrelated. In the early afternoon, the sonar again showed a strong reflection in the northwest corner of the lake. The dive team went down to check. They found another vehicle frame tilted in the mud, covered in algae and sediment. The license plate was nearly rotted, but under light, they read a few characters, 3P7. Comparing to the county's vehicle registry, Hale identified it as a plate from an old Dodge, abandoned in the 1970s. He requested photos, recording depth and coordinates, 41°5, N, 77°30, W, depth 32 feet. The divers continued sonar scanning along the eastern shore, where Pine Hollow Stream entered the lake. The flow here was narrow, but the stream bed had many deep pools with strong eddies. 2 divers followed guidelines, probing sections. They used poles to check the bottom mud, finding no large metal traces. One picked up a broken glass piece, surface worn, possibly bottle glass, sealed, and labeled Sample W3. Near 3 p.m., the team took a short break to change oxygen tanks. Hale and Rogers observed the lake surface rippling with spreading waves under the overcast sky. He noted in his log, limited visibility, flow direction northeast. Average depth 26-34 feet. Bottom mud 8-12 inches thick. When diving resumed, a member reported unusually disturbed mud in the lake's center, possibly from a large object moving. Hale had the area marked with an orange buoy for further checks the next day. By late afternoon, after 8 continuous hours, the diving operation ended. In total, sonar scanned 1.8 square miles of water, collecting 43 return images, 2 old vehicle frames, and 7 loose samples. No license plate matched Evan Carver's Chevrolet Nova. As the sun dipped behind the hills, fog again veiled the lake. The divers packed gear, checking tanks and sonar before leaving. Hale stood on the shore, watching the marking buoy bob in the gray water, and wrote the day's final report line. Underwater search completed. Results: 2 non-matching vehicle frames found, noted depth, flow direction, and sonar return positions. No new signs identified. As he closed the notebook, the sunset spread across the water, staining a deep red band across Lake Clearfield as it sank into darkness. On the morning of August 2, 1995, with fog still clinging to the surface of Lake Clearfield, the rescue team continued scanning along Pine Hollow Stream per Sheriff Thomas Hale's instructions. The goal was to check the stream bank area where the previous day's sonar had noted disturbed mud. The sky was overcast, temperature low, dim light making observation difficult. 2 police vehicles and a pickup carrying equipment stopped at the area marked by the orange buoy from the day before. Hale, with Lieutenant Rogers, led 4 volunteers and 2 county forensic technicians. The stream flowed narrowly, water murky, banks thick with grass. The group moved slowly, each wearing rubber gloves, using long iron probes in the mud. Around 10 a.m., volunteer Mark Elliott spotted a shiny object reflecting under moss near the western bank. He bent down, cleared the mud, and picked up a small broken metal keychain, still attached to a rotted leather strap fragment. Hale approached to examine it, noting the silver alloy hook with a broken tip, exposing rusted iron core, faintly embossed with a Chevrolet logo. He handed it to the forensic technician, requesting scene photos from 3 angles, measuring distance to the water's edge, and marking the position on the map with stake number 17. While the group documented, another volunteer, Sarah Mills, reported an object in the stream, about 5 meters from the keychain find. The flow was weak, bottom covered in mud and decayed leaves. She carefully waded in, picked up a clear glass shard about half a centimeter thick, one edge chipped, one corner still attached to black rubber seal. When rinsed, light clearly reflected the distinctive curve of an automobile windshield. Hale assessed it as likely broken car glass, immediately requesting it sealed with the keychain in separate evidence bags, labeled Exhibit A, key fragment, and Exhibit B, glass shard. The 2 items were consecutively numbered in the scene log. After collection, he expanded the search radius 10 meters along the bank, but found no other noteworthy objects beyond a few plastic scraps and pebbles. By noon, the group concluded the survey, bringing the 2 evidence bags to the command vehicle. At the scene, Hale noted in his log, February 8, 1995, Pine Hollow Creek. West Bank, 0.4 miles from Lake Clearfield. Finds broken keychain, car glass shard. Sealed, sent to Harrisburg Lab. After a quick meal in the vehicle, he and Rogers prepared the transfer paperwork, signed, sealed the evidence container with security tape, and sent it via urgent courier to the state lab. That afternoon, back at headquarters, Hale prepared a preliminary report to state police with a sketch of the discovery area. In the report, he detailed the keychain, silver alloy, broken tip, ring engraved T, 2.5 centimeters size, suspected Chevrolet vehicle, glass shard 5 mm thick, curvature matching passenger car windshield. The state lab responded via fax late afternoon, confirming receipt of samples, scheduling analysis within 3 days. Hale filed the fax in case missing persons #950729 and added temporary results. Possible link to missing vehicle, awaiting metal and glass trace confirmation. Outside, light drizzle began falling, pattering familiarly on the headquarters tin roof. He sat alone in the office, opened the map, staring at stake number 17, near the curving stream branch into the forest. If those two items truly belonged to the Chevrolet Nova, it meant the group of young people had gone farther than initially predicted. He folded the map, turned off the light, and wrote the day's final journal entry. 4th day of search. First evidence items found. Report sent to Harrisburg, awaiting forensic results. Late in the afternoon of August 3, 1995, as Thomas Hale had just returned to his office after an internal meeting on the search results, the internal phone line rang loudly. On the other end was Lieutenant Martin Hayes from the Pennsylvania State Police Investigation Unit. His voice was urgent, informing Hale that on the same day, July 29, the afternoon before the three young men disappeared, there had been an armed robbery at the Clinton Savings and Loan Bank branch in downtown Lock Haven. The case was being handled by the state unit, but since the robbers' escape route matched the Pine Hollow area, where Hale's team was focusing the search, they wanted to share information to avoid missing any possible connection. Hale opened his notebook, quickly jotting down notes as Hayes read the robbery occurred at 3:42 p.m. 3 masked suspects used .38 handguns, controlled the staff in under 5 minutes, took $12,000 in cash, and fled in an unidentified vehicle. The only external witness, a postal worker, stated he saw a dark-colored vehicle leave the area and head west. The road leading to Route 120, matching the Pine Hollow Road. A city police radio alert was broadcast at 3:55 p.m., but no units caught up to the vehicle due to the many side roads in the forested area. Hale leaned back in his chair, thoughtfully staring at the map still open from the previous day, where stake number 17 lay directly on that escape route. As Hayes continued providing ballistics data, he noted a detail at the bank scene. State police recovered 2.38 special shell casings, the same type as those found at Cole's hunting camp, just a few miles away. Same ammunition type, same direction of travel, same time frame of the day. The coincidence made Hale feel the need to ask questions. He asked, "Are you sure they escaped toward Pine Hollow?" Hayes confirmed. Both the scene map and witness statements pointed that way. They had also found wide tire tracks, possibly from a pickup truck, on the second turnoff from Route 120, not far from Cole's service gas station. Hale thanked him and requested copies of the full robbery summary report to add to the missing persons #950729 file. When he hung up, he stood and walked to the bulletin board with victim photos and the search route map. He used red string to connect two locations, the Clinton Savings and Loan Bank and Pine Hollow Creek, where his team had found the keychain. The string formed a single straight line heading west, cutting across the hilly area where the young men's vehicle was believed to have disappeared. He stared silently for a few minutes, then called Lieutenant Rogers into the room. The two reviewed the timeline. The victims left the shop after 8:30 p.m., while the robbery occurred more than 4 hours earlier. If they passed through that area that evening, they might have seen something, Hale said quietly. Rogers didn't respond, just took notes. They reviewed the witness statements again. Cole confirmed the three filled up gas at 10:10 p.m. and headed toward Pine Hollow, while driver Nielsen saw the vehicle turn onto the side road at 10:30 p.m. All on the same axis that the robbers used to flee that afternoon. A possibility flashed in Hale's mind. Perhaps the three young men accidentally encountered someone or something related to the robbery while passing through the forest area, and that caused their disappearance. He reopened the evidence file, pulling out the description sheet for the broken keychain and glass shard. If their vehicle had been pursued or involved in a collision, those items could easily be remnants of the incident. At that time, state police had not identified the license plate of the vehicle used by the robbers, but Hale asked the clerk to send copies of the list of registered vehicles suspected of entering or leaving the area on the afternoon and evening of July 29. He also requested a formal submission to the state ballistics lab to confirm if the shell casings from the bank matched those from Cole's hunting camp. That night, With only the soft whir of the ceiling fan in the office, Hale sat alone in front of the map, marking points with a red pen. The bank, the gas station, Pine Hollow, Ferensville, Clearfield, all lay along a narrow corridor running parallel to the Susquehanna River, connecting downtown to the western forest. The road the robbers fled on could be the very road the three young men drove into that same evening. He made no conclusions aloud, just opened the duty log and wrote briefly in the August 3rd notes. Received notification of Clinton Savings and Loan Bank robbery afternoon 7/29. Suspected escape route Pine Hollow. Timeline and location overlap with missing group's travel route. Preliminary assessment, possible connection. On the morning of August 4th, 1995, after receiving the full robbery summary report from the state force, Thomas Hale called an emergency meeting at the Clinton County Sheriff's headquarters. The small meeting room had walls covered with topographic maps marked densely in red, fluorescent lights casting down on the tired faces of officers after days of searching. Hale stood at the board, holding a metal pointer, presenting the two investigative possibilities raised after cross-referencing the robbery timeline with the three young men's disappearance. The first hypothesis, the victims might have been directly involved in the Clinton Savings and Loan robbery as accomplices or aides in transporting or concealing the stolen goods. The robbed amount was $12,000 in cash, and witnesses described the perpetrators fleeing in a dark-colored vehicle. Evan Carver's 1978 Chevrolet Nova, a two-door dark green, fit that description perfectly. If the three were truly involved, their disappearance could be an attempt to go into hiding. However, the weakness of this hypothesis was the lack of clear motive. All three had stable jobs, no criminal records, and no one in town had ever heard of them having financial troubles. Hale directed investigators to review bank accounts, credit cards, and spending habits of each person. He also instructed the technical team to re-examine all evidence collected at the Pine Hollow scene, including the keychain and glass shard, for any signs of collision or deliberate vehicle destruction. The second hypothesis, which he believed was more likely, the three young men might have accidentally witnessed something related to the robbery or its perpetrators and been killed to silence them. Based on timeline data, the robbers left the bank at 3:47 p.m. and fled toward Pine Hollow. The victims left the auto shop around 8:30 p.m. that same day, just a few hours after the area became an escape route. If the robbers returned to retrieve stolen goods or hide in the forest, encountering the three out fishing was entirely possible. In that scenario, the victims could have been attacked, their vehicle pushed into the water area, or hidden in the forest. Hale drew two parallel lines on the board, involved in robbery and witnesses eliminated, adding an arrow extending from Pine Hollow to Clearfield, where divers had found two old vehicle frames. He assigned clear tasks. Lieutenant Rogers would handle the first line of investigation, coordinating with state police to check ballistics data, vehicle traces, and bank witnesses, while Hale himself and the county team would focus on the second, determining the possibility of the three young men being attacked in the forest. The meeting lasted until nearly noon. Each person reported what could be done immediately, checking the list of .38 gun owners in the area, reviewing registered firearm sales reports, scanning lists of vehicles matching the Nova's color passing through Kohl's service gas station before and after 10:10 p.m. Hale noted every point, his handwriting steady, missing no details. When it ended, he looked at the photo of the three young men pinned next to the board, a high school graduation shot, and remained silent for a long moment before saying, "We rule out no possibilities until we have evidence." That afternoon, he sat alone in his office, reopening the bank robbery file and carefully examining the scene photos sent by state police. 2.38 casings lay a few steps apart, fired into the tile floor, indicating warning shots or intentional panic inducement. If the same gun was used at Pine Hollow, this could be a key lead. He compared the casing sizes in the photos to specs from the lab, noting in the margin, .38 special, same caliber. Awaiting rifling confirmation. Outside the window, late-day sunlight slanted in, casting long tree shadows on the wall. Hale took the map, drawing 2 more red circles overlapping the previously marked area, labeling them Region A for the Pine Hollow Forest Road and Region B for the Lake Clearfield Shore, Deep Water Zone. These 2 areas became the center of the new search plan. He closed the log, looking at the final note for August 4th. Established 2 parallel investigative hypotheses. Goal: determined connection between bank robbery and disappearance at Pine Hollow. On the afternoon of August 5, 1995, right after the meeting, summarizing the 2 investigative hypotheses ended, Sheriff Thomas Hale and Lieutenant Rogers decided to conduct an inspection of the hunting camp owned by Raymond Cole, the operator of Cole's service gas station and the last witness to see the young men on the night of July 29th. The camp was about 6 miles northwest of downtown Lock Haven, in the Teodotin State Forest, adjacent to the Pine Hollow Trail, an area the search team had passed through multiple times. A 4-person team was sent, including 2 county deputies and 2 forensic technicians carrying soil sampling equipment and scene photography gear. The road to the camp was a narrow dirt path, flanked by tall grass with old tire ruts deeply imprinted in the damp ground. When they arrived, Cole's small log cabin was tucked behind a row of maple trees, thin smoke rising from the chimney, indicating someone was home. Hale knocked, introduced himself, explained the purpose of the inspection, emphasizing it was only a supportive survey for the missing persons case and not a search warrant. Cole, a short man with a salt and pepper beard, appeared cooperative, but his eyes were tense. He invited the group into the yard, saying he hadn't heard or seen anything unusual beyond vehicle noise that night. While Hale spoke with the owner, Lieutenant Rogers and the technicians spread out around the yard, observing the ground. Behind the cabin was a clearing about 20 meters wide, with a game processing table, water barrel, and old tarps covering hunting gear. Under the dry leaves, a technician found a rusted shell casing half buried in the mud near a large oak tree. He picked it up with tweezers, placed it in an evidence bag, labeling it Exhibit Shell Casing. The casing was clearly .38 special brass dulled. A few meters away, they found 2 more scattered casings. Hale approached, requesting on-site photos and marking coordinates with plastic stakes. He asked Cole if these were casings from his shooting during the previous hunting season. Cole replied they could be from hunters or camp renters who practice shooting, as he often lent the land to friends. Hale made no comment, just noted .38 casings, west of log cabin, 6 m from porch. Owner unclear on origin. He then had soil samples taken around the area, especially where the casings were found. The technician used a stainless steel spoon to collect 3 10 centimeters deep samples, placed in separate vials, labeled with time and location, for testing for gun oil or metal traces. Next, they circled the entire property. The path behind the camp was rough, but showed no fresh tire tracks. The ground was dry, only faint ruts from an old truck from before the rainy season. Hale checked the grassy area beside the house, where Cole parked his red Ford pickup. The soil compression around the tires was even, no signs of another vehicle parking nearby. He moved to the western wooden fence corner, bordering dense forest, carefully observing depressions. No bloodstains, unusual objects, or disturbance beyond a few empty beer cans and ammo boxes. Back in the yard, he asked more about firearm use there. Cole said he owned a registered Smith & Wesson .38 for target practice, legal for years, used only in hunting season or for shooting cans. He added that the casings in the yard were probably leftovers from previous shoots, then gave an awkward smile. Hale requested to see the firearm permit. Cole went inside and brought out a crumpled folder, showing it correct name, still valid. After noting it, Hale returned the documents, concluding with a report stating, inspection of Cole hunting camp, collected 3.38 special casings, 3 soil samples, no vehicle traces or blood, owner cooperative. As they left, the sky had turned to late afternoon, dark clouds moving over the mountains, light rain falling. On the way back, Rogers drove silently while Hale opened his notebook, rereading the notes, underlining .38 special, twice in pencil. Under the dim light, he watched raindrops slide down the car window, his mind picturing the silent Pine Hollow forest with rustling wind, where both the disappearance and the robbery seemed to converge. As they neared town, he closed the notebook and said softly to himself, "Nothing unusual, but nothing entirely harmless either." On the morning of August 7, 1995, 2 days after completing the inspection of Raymond Cole's hunting camp, the Pennsylvania State Police Crime Lab in Harrisburg sent a preliminary forensic report to the Clinton County Sheriff's Office. Thomas Hale received the documents at 8:15 a.m., just as he entered headquarters. The thin file, 3 typed pages with enlarged photos of the 3 recovered casings. The report's opening stated, "Sample designations Exhibit C1, C2, C3. Source: Cole, hunting camp scene, Clinton County. Ammunition type .38. Special, brass, round nose." The ballistics technicians determined all 3 casings were fired from the same firearm, based on matching rifling marks and firing pin impressions. Notably, these rifling characteristics matched exactly those of the weapon used in the July 29 Clinton Savings and Loan Bank robbery, per Archives State Police Lab data. The report concluded, high probability of same weapon type used, cannot confirm identical firearm without physical gun for direct comparison. Hale read carefully, pausing at the examiner's additional note, "No usable fingerprints on casings, surfaces lightly oxidized, estimated exposed outdoors, at least 1 week prior to recovery." He sat quietly for a moment, pen tapping the desk. 3 casings found at the hunting camp, matching the robbery gun type, less than 2 miles from the Pine Hollow route, too close a coincidence to ignore. However, the report's latter section noted, soil samples, D1, D2, D3 tested, no blood, engine oil, or biological organic traces. No evidence of burning, cleaning, or disposal activity, meaning no physical signs of violence at the camp. Hale noted, .38 casings, same type as robbery, no biological traces. Exact firing time undetermined. He carefully clipped the report into the missing persons #9500729 file, then called Lieutenant Rogers to his office. The two examined the enlarged casing photos, 4-groove rifling characteristic of Smith & Wesson models. Rogers asked, "Does this mean Cole might own a similar gun?" Hale replied slowly, "He has a .38 permit, yes, but this ammo is common. The issue is why casings are in the yard, around the robbery time frame." They agreed to send a formal request to the State Ballistics Agency to check if any registered Smith & Wesson belonged to Cole or relatives. Hale also contacted the lab for deeper soil analysis around the find area for lead, brass, or gunpowder residue, despite the preliminary report showing no burn signs. While awaiting supplements, he drafted a letter to Harrisburg, thanking the lab for the quick response and requesting to retain original casings for future comparisons. At noon, in the small meeting room, he briefed the investigation team on the results. 38 special casings from Cole's camp matched the robbery weapon type, but no biological traces or fingerprints, soil clean, no blood or oil. Temporary conclusion, insufficient evidence of criminal activity at the camp. The room was silent, only the scratch of pens. One officer asked if they should seek a warrant for Cole's home. Hale shook his head. "Not yet. We have only the ammo type. No direct link evidence." He closed the file, checked the clock at 2:05 p.m., then wrote in the duty log, "Received ballistics report. Matches robbery weapon type for Clinton Savings and Loan. No biological signs. Continue monitoring. Await detailed confirmation from State Lab." Outside the window, the sky was leaden gray, wind gusting and rattling the blinds lightly. Hale turned off the desk lamp, leaned back in his chair, his mind echoing images of the casings lying quietly in the mud, and their dull metallic gleam, like a fitting puzzle piece, but not yet enough to complete the picture he was trying to assemble. On the afternoon of August 8, 1995, after reading the ballistics report, confirming that the shell casings recovered from Raymond Cole's hunting camp matched the type used in the bank robbery, Sheriff Thomas Hale decided to invite Cole in for a second formal statement at the Clinton County headquarters. The interview took place at 3 p.m. in the small second-floor interrogation room, with Hale, Lieutenant Rogers, and a duty stenographer present to take the minutes. Cole arrived on time, wearing a heavy cloth jacket, appearing calm on the surface but with eyes that avoided contact. After reading him his rights and confirming that he was cooperating voluntarily, Hale began asking about the evening of July 29th, the time when the three young men went missing. Cole answered in a hoarse voice, "That night I was home the whole time. After closing the gas station at 10:30, I went back to the camp. No one was with me, no one stopped by." When Hale asked if he had heard any unusual sounds that night, Cole replied, "I remember some noise, probably a vehicle or gunshots far off, around 11 p.m., but it wasn't clear." This answer caught Hale's attention, because according to witness statements, the group of young men was last seen at 10:30 p.m., turning onto Pine Hollow Road, and several residents on the edge of the forest had confirmed hearing a loud explosion around that same time. If Cole heard the noise at 11 p.m., that meant it was at least 30 minutes later than the established time frame, or he was deliberately shifting the time. Hale pressed for specifics. "Are you sure it was around 11 o'clock? Did you check the clock?" Cole paused for a few seconds before answering, "I don't remember exactly. I didn't look at the clock, just guessed. I was watching TV, a sports program, then turned it off and heard something out in the woods. I thought it was animals, or someone night hunting." Hale made a note, but did not comment. He shifted to asking about the Smith & Wesson handgun that Cole had reported as legally registered, whether he had fired it recently. Cole replied, "Yes. About a week before that, I fired a few rounds out back, like I said. Haven't fired it since." Hale showed him photos of the casings recovered from the hunting camp and asked if he recognized them. Cole leaned in, nodded slowly. "Looks like the kind I use, but it could be someone else's. A lot of people come to shoot there." When Hale asked if anyone specific had been there, he listed a few vague names, none with clear addresses, then shrugged, "I don't keep a log." Rogers interjected, asking if he remembered when those people had been there recently. Cole said he wasn't sure, maybe early July. Each of his answers was short, disjointed, delivered in a flat tone, neither fearful nor confident. Hale changed direction, asking about the three missing young men, whether he knew them or had ever spoken to them beyond pumping gas. Cole said he recognized their faces because they were regular customers, but he had never interacted with them outside the station. They were good kids, polite. "I don't have anything else to say," he said, eyes fixed on the table. When asked the last time he saw them, he stated firmly, "Around 10:10 p.m., they drove off. I watched their taillights disappear. That's it." Hale quietly took notes, then asked, "Did you leave the camp afterward?" Cole denied it, saying he went to bed early because he was tired. The interview lasted over an hour, ending at 4:20 p.m. In the transcript, Hale noted, "Statement of witness Raymond Cole, inconsistency regarding time of hearing noise. Source of noise, undetermined. Confirms legal ownership of .38 firearm. No direct evidence linking to disappearance or robbery." Before leaving the room, Cole asked quietly, "Do you guys suspect me?" Hale replied curtly, "We're verifying." After he left, Rogers turned and said under his breath, "If he's hiding something, he's not hiding much by the way he talks." Hale didn't respond, just stared at the newly updated file folder, where a photo of the hunting camp was clipped together with the three casings, and the note casings match robbery type. He closed the folder and wrote in his daily log, "Interview Raymond Cole, claims home 7/29 evening, heard noise approximately 23 o'clock. Contradicts witness timeline, currently insufficient grounds for detention." As he left the room, the late afternoon light streamed through the long hallway, reflecting off the sign that read, "Missing Persons #9500729, where the three victims' photos still lay quietly under glass, reminding everyone that the answers were still somewhere in the gaps yet to be filled. On August 10, 1995, 2 days after the interview with Raymond Cole, Sheriff Thomas Hale ordered a reenactment of the missing young men's route to precisely determine the distance traveled, possible stopping points, and the time of disappearance. Early that morning, the crime scene team gathered at headquarters, preparing vehicles, a 1978 dark green Chevrolet Nova, borrowed from the department garage, with specifications very similar to Evan Carver's car. The goal was to simulate the entire route from the Mill Hall Auto Shop to Cole's service station, then continue toward Pine Hollow up to the Ferensville Lake area. Hale wanted to verify the actual travel times between the points provided by witnesses to see if the 10:30 p.m. window was realistic. At 9 a.m., the convoy, consisting of the test Nova, 2 patrol cars, and a forensic unit filming vehicle, set out. Lieutenant Rogers drove the Nova, while Hale rode shotgun, holding a stopwatch and detailed map. The weather that day was lightly sunny, roads dry, a breeze from the river stirring thin dust on the surface. They started from the auto shop, drove along Main Avenue, and stopped in front of Cole's service, exactly where witnesses described. The segment took 4 minutes and 18 seconds at an average speed of 35 miles per hour. At the station, Hale had the car stop for 2 minutes to simulate refueling and purchases, then recorded a hypothetical departure time of 10:12 p.m. From there, they turned onto Route 120 West, a quiet road flanked by dense pine forest. At the curve, leading to Pine Hollow, the clock read a hypothetical 10:29 p.m., matching the time driver Nielsen reported seeing the car turn. Rogers slowed to 25 miles per hour. The car bounced heavily on the gravel-strewn dirt section. From this point on, they followed the exact route the search teams had previously surveyed, a gently sloping narrow road wide enough for only one vehicle. Hale marked every 100 meters, observing the road surface and terrain incline. After more than 2 miles, the road began descending noticeably, with a small creek ravine on the right and a narrow flat strip on the left, leading deep into the woods. He ordered a stop, measured the slope, about 11 degrees, and took panoramic photos. This was where rescue personnel had previously found faint tire tracks heading toward the forest, now hardened dry. Rogers tested accelerating slowly down the slope, then braking hard to measure skid marks. The tire impressions were similar in depth to those found, Hale noted. If the Nova was going fast, likelihood of skidding here is high. However, tracks from 7/29 indicate no natural fall momentum, possibly blocked or forcibly stopped. They backed the car up, measured the distance between the stop and a potential turnaround point, finding only 14 meters sufficient for a U-turn, meaning if another vehicle blocked the way, the Nova could not evade it. The technical team photographed the entire area with a 35mm camera and marked it on the topographic map. Afterward, they continued half a mile to the low clearing where the rescue team had found the keychain. The mud had dried, the ground flat, but Hale still ordered additional soil samples for comparison. He pointed west, where the road descended toward the lake. If the car kept going, it would take about 10 minutes to reach Ferensville. But no witnesses saw them pass through. That means they disappeared between Pine Hollow and this creek. He checked the watch and recorded the time, hypothetical 10:47 p.m., matching the time residents reported hearing the strange explosion that night. He ordered the stopwatch reset, had the car drive slowly down the slope again, then stop at the simulated position. The forensic team placed reflective stakes marking the time points: 10:10 station, 10:30 Pine Hollow turn, 10:47 explosion. The entire route fit within a 3-mile radius. When the reenactment ended, they returned to headquarters to compile the data. The report clearly stated, distance from station to suspected point approximately 17 minutes, average speed 25-30 miles per hour. If the victims stopped, or were blocked on the Pine Hollow slope, the time frame perfectly matched the recorded explosion window. In the afternoon briefing that day, Hale presented the results to the full team, pointing to the map with the 3 time markers. Between 10:30 and 10:47, no witness saw them leave this area. The most likely scenario is the vehicle was blocked or forcibly stopped on the slope. he concluded. Rogers added that the terrain there was narrow enough that a single blocking vehicle would seal the entire passage. Hale agreed, adding, if someone was waiting, they would have no chance to turn around. The room fell silent, only the light tapping of a pen on the table. When everyone dispersed, Hale lingered, looking at the freshly printed photo of the Pine Hollow slope, the faint tire tracks angling down the hillside. He wrote in his August 10th investigation log, route reenactment complete. Estimated disappearance time, 22:47. Conclusion, vehicle most likely blocked on Pine Hollow slope, did not fall naturally. In the weeks following the route reenactment, the entire Clinton County force continued reviewing every detail of the case, but found no new leads. Search teams returned to the Pine Hollow, Ferensville, and Clearfield Lake areas 3 more times, equipped with metal detectors and infrared cameras to scan for metal traces or buried objects. They expanded the radius to 10 miles from the slope location, diving again into deep pools and sinkholes, but still found no trace of the Chevrolet Nova or any identifiable wreckage from the victim's vehicle. Meanwhile, additional test results from the Harrisburg lab on the casings and soil samples yielded no new data. The final report confirmed no blood, no burn marks, no oil or biological traces. All collected evidence only proved that Cole's hunting camp had been used for firing 38 special rounds, but nothing linked it to the robbery or disappearance. Hale continued pursuing the Raymond Cole angle for many more months. He monitored financial transactions, interviewed neighbors, checked phone records. Everything came back normal. Cole continued living at the gas station, occasionally opening for business and maintaining a monotonous life with no unusual signs. By mid-1996, the case had nearly stalled completely. The state investigative unit closed the bank robbery file due to lack of suspects. The stolen money was never recovered, and the 3 Lock Haven young men remained missing without a trace. Hale, who had been tied to this file for over a year, still occasionally visited the Pine Hollow woods on weekends, almost as a habit. He would bring the old map, walk along the slope route, stand quietly looking down at the creek where they had found the keychain. Each time he returned, he would open his notebook, add a few lines of observations, then close it and file it away in his personal cabinet. In February 1997, the Clinton County Sheriff's Office conducted a full review of all unsolved cases. The file Missing Persons #950729 was listed among those with no progress. Though Hale still held hope, by mid-1998, as he prepared for retirement, pressure from administration to reorganize storage led to the case being officially reclassified as a cold case. On September 12, 1998, the final memo was signed, stating, "No new evidence, no identified suspects. Recommend archiving file and evidence under code #PA9544. The evidence items, including the broken keychain, glass fragment, 38 special casings, 3 soil samples, the Pine Hollow area map, and all crime scene photos were sealed in metal box number 14 SO219 and placed in the South Storage Vault at county headquarters. The electronic version of the file was transferred to the Pennsylvania State Cold Case System that same day, marked inactive, no leads. Outside, early autumn was chilly, mist covering the Susquehanna River, the water murky gray. Hale stood on the headquarters porch, looking down at the parking lot, where the search team vehicles sat idle. He knew the investigation was over on paper, but his mind still held too many blanks. Before turning in his badge, he wrote the final line in his worn leather notebook: "No car, no people, no answers. Pine Hollow keeps its secret." He closed the notebook, clipped it with the map into an envelope, placed it in the archive file, and signed off one last time. When the office lights went out, the room was left with only the glow reflecting off the rows of file cabinets, illuminating the faded white label, #PA9544, Lock Haven Missing Persons, July 1995. Then the cold storage door closed, the lock clicking softly, sealing 3 years of fruitless investigation, and the disappearance of Evan Carver, Darrell Lawson, and Mike Jensen, officially became part of Pennsylvania's long list of cold cases. In November 2005, 7 years after the Lock Haven disappearance was moved to cold case status, the Clinton County Sheriff's Office conducted its periodic inventory of the entire evidence vault to support digitizing old files. The storage room was in the south basement of headquarters, where dim yellow lights cast shadows over hundreds of tightly packed metal shelves, each holding numbered iron boxes by year and case code. That morning, the vault technician team of 3, including young Detective David Morrow, was assigned to review 1990s files, ensuring every piece of evidence had an acknowledgement form and was coded in the new system. When they reached the third cabinet row, shelf 47, Morrow spotted the old metal box labeled #PA9544, Missing Persons, Lock Haven, July 1995. The box was dusty, the paper label yellowed, Sheriff Thomas Hale's signature still faintly visible under the sealed tape. He carefully cut the tape edge with a knife, lifted the lid, and inside were the sequentially numbered evidence bags, broken keychain, glass fragment, 38 special casings, 3 soil sample vials, a stack of crime scene photos, and an envelope of documents containing the 1995 Harrisburg lab reports. As Morrow checked each bag for confirmation, he noticed at the very bottom of the box a small envelope not listed in the original inventory, the paper-browned corner pinned under the photo stack. On the envelope, written in pencil, was only a short line, PA95-6 Pine Hollow Creek, August 2, 1995. He gently opened it. Inside was a clear plastic bag containing several hair strands about 6 centimeters long, dark brown, coiled around a small piece of dried soil. There was no tag or examiner's signature. Morrow paused, cross-checked the old evidence catalog in the electronic file, but found no entry related to hair. He noted additional unregistered evidence discovered and took the envelope upstairs to present to the storage supervisor, Linda Shaver. She examined it closely, compared it to the 1998 handover log, and confirmed this envelope had never been entered into the main system. Based on the handwriting and date, it was likely a sample collected from the Pine Hollow Creek bank around the time the keychain was found, but misplaced or overlooked when closing the file. Shaver decided to log this evidence in the 2005 inventory under code PA95C, unexamined hair sample, resealing it in a new evidence bag with a red label, retain, unexamined. Since the lab at that time had no budget for DNA analysis on closed cases, the hair sample was returned to the metal box with the original evidence and tagged with the new inventory seal. Morrow wrote a detailed report, November 21, 2005. Inventory of file hash, PA9544. Additional discovery of hair sample code, PA95C, unexamined. Resealed and retained in cold case storage. After completing the paperwork, he placed the box back on the shelf, locked the cabinet, and wrote the final line in the inventory log, condition stable storage. Evidence complete. Cold case file remains sealed. In the far corner of the room, the yellow light reflected off the long rows of metal boxes, silent like small coffins, holding the past of hundreds of unsolved cases. On the lid of the Lock Haven box, the new red tag PA95C had just been affixed to the upper right corner, marking the quiet existence of evidence unnoticed for 10 years. As Morrow left the room, he glanced back at the scrawled old label, Missing Persons, Lock Haven 1995, and wondered if anyone in the department still remembered the 3 names, Carver, Lawson, and Jensen. In the summary report sent to the state, a brief note read, "All cold case files 1990-1998 reviewed, status updated. Case hash PA9544 includes additional evidence PA95C, retained pending directive for examination when feasible." No one suspected that this seemingly minor note would become the starting point for a chain of events many years later. But at that moment, it was just an anonymous part of the routine annual evidence inventory at the Clinton County Vault, where everything was neatly stored, properly cataloged, so no one had to think further about what had been buried with time. In April 2016, more than 2 decades after the Lock Haven disappearance, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in coordination with the nonprofit Cold Justice Foundation and the Pennsylvania State Police, launched a special program called Project Lost Voices, a project to re-examine unsolved missing persons and homicide cases from the 1980s, 1990s across the state. The goal was to leverage advances in DNA technology, the National CODIS database, and trace evidence analysis techniques to find new clues from files dormant for decades. The initial list included 127 cold cases, among which file hash PA9544, Lock Haven Missing Persons, July 1995, was prioritized due to the presence of untested evidence, the hair sample coded PA95C, discovered during the 2005 inventory. Selection was approved by the Cold Case Division Office at the FBI headquarters in Pittsburgh, and a federal investigative team was assigned to Central Pennsylvania. Leading the team was Special Agent Eleanor Reed, 38 years old, a criminal profile analyst and DNA evidence specialist who had worked on biological data recovery cases in Virginia and Ohio. Reed was described as meticulous, quiet, with an excellent memory for details and a habit of personally verifying every document before reading others' reports. On April 12, she officially received the Lock Haven file handover from the State Police Office, along with all resealed copies of evidence from the Clinton County Vault. The file arrived at the FBI in a metal container, the lid still bearing the red seal PA95C. Reed unsealed it in the Central Pittsburgh lab under the witness of 2 technicians. Inside, beyond the documented evidence, keychain, glass fragment, casings, soil samples, she immediately noticed the small plastic bag containing the hair strands labeled unexamined hair sample. In the storage report, the final 2005 note simply read, unexamined due to budget constraints. Reed saw it as the perfect reason to include the case in the new generation DNA testing program. That same afternoon, she drafted a request to the Quantico Forensic Laboratory for mitochondrial DNA profiling on the hair sample, a method capable of identifying maternal lineage even from degraded samples. Returning to her office, she spent the entire evening rereading all 21 volumes of the old file, from Sheriff Thomas Hale's 1995 transcripts to the 2005 evidence inventory report. The faded black and white photos of the Pine Hollow area still bore the original red dots numbering stake 17, where the keychain was found. In the margin of one photo, Hale's handwritten note was clearly visible. If they were blocked on the slope, evidence must be somewhere around the creek. Reed lingered on that detail for a long time, then wrote in her personal notebook, consider reopening Pine Hollow scene, combined with LiDAR technology. The next morning, she contacted the state cold case unit to confirm coordination, while requesting the Clinton County Sheriff's Office to provide updated topographic maps and GPS data for the old area. The email reply came the same day. The vault still held the maps, but the current sheriff, Mark Hensley, Hale's successor, confirmed they had not returned to Pine Hollow since 1998. Reed decided to plan a preliminary scene survey within the next 2 weeks. In her report to FBI headquarters, she wrote Project Lost Voices, case hash PA9544, status, file reopened. Unexamined DNA evidence discovered 2005, sample sent to Quantico, awaiting results. Initial phase goals, verify evidence integrity, cross-reference victim identification data. Around the same time, local media began covering the project, praising the FBI and civilian organizations' efforts to seek justice for the forgotten. In Lock Haven, many older residents still remembered the 1995 disappearance. A few small newspapers noted it had once been the county's most haunting case. In the Pittsburgh office, lit through the night, Reed pinned a photo of Lake Clearfield to the whiteboard, next to the Pine Hollow map. At the bottom, she wrote in red marker, 3 people, 1 car, vanished on a 3-mile road, 21 years of silence. Then she lightly underlined, PA95C, as if marking the new starting point for a case that time seemed to have swallowed whole. In the week following the submission of hair sample code PA95C to Quantico, Special Agent Eleanor Reed spent all her time in the Pittsburgh office reviewing the entire 1995 Lock Haven case file. She opened each original file folder, arranging them in chronological order, from Sheriff Thomas Hale's initial report on the 3 missing young men to the 1998 case closure document. Every yellowed page was meticulously annotated by her in pencil, renumbered according to her own system. Reed paid particular attention to the 1995 ballistics report and the 1996 supplement. These documents stated that the 338 special casings recovered at the Cole hunting camp matched the type of gun used in the Clinton Savings and Loan Bank robbery, but since there was no physical firearm for comparison, the result was concluded as inconclusive. In the ballistics appendix, she noticed a small handwritten note. Hunting camp owner Raymond Cole has a permit for a Smith & Wesson .38 special, registered in 1989. Reed underlined Cole's name with her pen, then moved to the state's electronic criminal records file. She entered a query about this man and discovered a detail never mentioned in the 1995 file. In 2003, Lycoming County Police had confiscated a Smith & Wesson .38 from Cole during an investigation into illegal weapons possession after he fired warning shots in a hunting land dispute. The gun was returned to him after a few months due to no criminal charges, but the test-fired bullet had been retained by the state forensics lab in the NIBIN database, the National Integrated Ballistics Identification Network. Reed opened the electronic report and compared the technical specifications: same gun type, same caliber, same 4-groove right twist rifling. She sat motionless for a few minutes, then flipped back to the enlarged photo of the 1995 casing. The rifling pattern and firing pin impression position nearly matched the 2003 sample. She noted in her notebook, preliminary match, high probability that Cole's gun is the same type as the one used in the robbery and the Pine Hollow scene. From that detail, Reed began cross-checking other facts in the old file. She noticed inconsistencies in Cole's 1995 statement. He claimed to have heard noises at 11 p.m., while another witness reported gunshots around 10:45 p.m. Additionally, Hale's interview report clearly noted Cole stating he had not left the house after closing the gas station, but the July 1995 Ferensville area phone records showed a local call originating from Cole's service station at 10:50 p.m., with the destination number unidentified because data from that era did not retain directories. Reed paused at this line, adding a large question mark in her notebook. She understood that these scattered pieces, when connected, formed a chain of suspicion directly involving the man who had been a key witness. To verify, she called the State Central Archives office, requesting copies of the entire 2003 case file, especially images and information on Cole's confiscated Smith & Wesson. 3 days later, the documents arrived: clear photos, the serial number engraved on the gun barrel, and the NIBIN bullet entry coded #PA03Li17. Reed placed the two photos side by side, one from 1995, one from 2003, then used a ruler to compare the firing pin impression positions. The match was nearly perfect. Though this was not yet conclusive evidence, she knew that if DNA or ballistics were officially confirmed, the Lock Haven case could be reopened after 21 years. That afternoon, in the quiet office, Reed wrote a memorandum to the Lost Voices project director. Recommend reopening file #PA9544, based on preliminary ballistics match between 1995 casings and 2003 confiscated firearm owned by the same individual. Request coordination with the state's Cold Case Division to retrieve NIBIN sample and verify comparison. She signed it and stamped priority. By evening, with the yellow light reflecting off the whiteboard, Reed hung a series of sticky notes. 1995. Disappearance, Pine Hollow, Cole witness. 2003, Cole gun confiscated. 2016, ballistics match. At the bottom, she added in red marker. If same gun proves Cole linked to both events. Looking back at the board, the red arrows and connecting lines formed a dense web, converging on a single point, Pine Hollow, July 29, 1995. She leaned back in her chair, sighed, feeling the thick silence of the room after hours of work. On the desk, her coffee had gone cold. The computer screen displayed the topographic map of Lock Haven, with coordinates 41°5 in Theron and 77°30 Buddy, where Hale had written his final note. Vehicle likely intercepted at the slope. Reed shut down the computer and wrote a brief entry in her duty log. Preliminary conclusion: new data sufficient to initiate reinvestigation of 1995 Lock Haven case. Decision to reopen case. Just as Special Agent Eleanor Reed completed her report proposing to reopen the Lock Haven case, an unexpected event occurred more than 150 miles to the north. In March 2016, routine 20-year maintenance on the Clearfield Reservoir Dam and Drainage System, owned by the Pennsylvania State Water Authority, was underway. The reservoir water level was gradually lowered to inspect the dam structure, and during this process, the civil engineering team discovered a large metal object submerged under thick mud near the western shore, in an area untouched since the 1980s. At first, they thought it was a tractor frame or old equipment, but as the water dropped another 2 meters, the curved roof and door frames of a vehicle became clear. A worker named Jacob Hall immediately reported it to the site inspector, who notified the state police that morning of March 15. By noon, the Clearfield Area Investigation Team, coordinating with the State Forensics Unit, sealed off the discovery site, cordoning a 200-meter radius, erecting temporary barriers and tarps to prevent media access. When Agent Reed received the alert through the internal notification system, she immediately left Pittsburgh, driving 4 hours to the scene. The sky was overcast with gray clouds, and wind from the reservoir blew bitterly cold. The water level was so low that patches of gray-brown mud and lake bottom were exposed, interspersed with rotted tree stumps. In the depression, the object believed to be the vehicle lay tilted, half buried in mud, half exposed, entirely heavily rusted. The recovery team had to set up a temporary cable rig to pull it from the mire. As the cables tightened, chunks of mud fell away, revealing the classic square front end and round headlights, characteristics of a late 1970s Chevrolet Nova. Reed stood a few meters away, eyes fixed on the body as the final mud was washed off with pressure hoses. Beneath the rust, the steel VIN plate was faint, but still legible with the characters 1X27D8W344219. She instructed the technician to record the number, then quickly checked it on her tablet against the Pennsylvania State Vehicle Registry. The result appeared in seconds, silencing the group. The VIN matched exactly the Chevrolet Nova registered to owner Evan Carver, resident of Lock Haven, reported missing on July 29, 1995. Reed took a deep breath, staring at the flashing text on the screen, then ordered an expanded perimeter seal and contacted the state cold case office to confirm file code #PA9544. The forensics team quickly erected a protective tent around the recovery area, set up lighting, and conducted overall scene photography before moving any evidence. Mud and sediment samples were taken from 4 different positions around the vehicle for geological analysis and to determine flow direction. After nearly 2 hours of reinforcement and safety checks, the vehicle was lifted ashore by hydraulic crane and carefully placed on a specialized nylon tarp to prevent loss of material or contamination of traces. As the low-pressure hose washing of the vehicle body began, technicians were assigned to disassemble parts, according to protocol: front doors, hood, and rear trunk. All actions were logged in the scene journal with exact minute-by-minute timestamps. In the front seating area, thick mud was scraped, layer by layer, revealing white-gray bone fragments intertwined with rotted fabric. Dr. Mendez ordered a halt, using a small trowel to separate bone segments, photographing and numbering them. In just 2 hours, 3 positions were identified: driver's seat, torso, and left arm; passenger seat, pelvis, and fractured skull; rear seat, 2 ribs, forearm, and smaller skull portion. In total, 3 human skeletons, in a state of decomposition, consistent with over 2 decades, submerged in water. Reed stood nearby, observing silently. As technicians continued scraping mud from the floor, they discovered a small, dull metallic object, cylindrical and hollow, 38 special casing, lying near the parking brake, heavily oxidized. Mendez picked it up with tweezers, placed it in a stainless steel tray, and signaled for photography and sealing as Exhibit CF1. Shell casing found inside vehicle. Immediately after, under the rear seat floor, a second technician found another unusual item: a clump of bright blonde hair stuck tightly to the steel frame, root ends fragmented, but strands still glossy. When removed, everyone recognized it as a wig, synthetic fibers about 20 centimeters long. Reed ordered it logged separately as Exhibit CF2, synthetic hair. Since this detail did not exist in the 1995 file, the discovery of the wig recalled the old bank robbery report where the robbers wore wigs and women's clothing for disguise. She said nothing, but in her mind, the pieces began fitting together. By midday, the entire vehicle frame was moved to the mobile lab set up at the scene. The skeletons were transferred to 3 separate nylon bags, labeled CF16A, CF16B, and CF16C, sent directly to the Harrisburg Forensics Lab for DNA identification. Each piece of evidence was final checked: 1.38 special casing, 1 blonde wig, and floor mud samples. The preliminary report noted no signs of fire, no signs of explosion. Small round perforation in left driver's door panel, likely bullet penetration. Upon reading that line, Reed ordered detailed photos of the door frame sent immediately to the State Ballistics Lab for trajectory analysis. Over the next 3 days, the Harrisburg forensics team conducted DNA testing. Despite heavy decomposition, mitochondrial DNA methods allowed recovery of genetic sequences from remaining bone marrow and teeth. Results received on March 20th confirmed everything. CF16A matched Evan Carver's DNA, CF16B matched Darrell Lawson, and CF16C matched Mike Jensen, based on reference samples from relatives stored in CODIS since the 1990s. The report concluded 3 victims missing in 1995 from Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, identified via DNA testing. Time of death consistent with late July 1995, PARS 5 days. Analysis of skull bones from 2 samples showed 0.38-inch round penetration holes with microscopic gunpowder burns on bone edges, indicating close-range shots. The third skeleton, Mike Jensen's, had rib fractures and a small metal fragment embedded in the sternum, identified as a deformed .38 bullet. Official cause of death recorded: penetrating craniothoracic trauma from close-range gunshot. As Reed read the report, she sat for a long time in the room, eyes fixed on time of death consistent with disappearance. 21 years, and all theories of getting lost or accident ended. This was murder. The Chevrolet Nova did not plunge into the lake by accident. It was deliberately pushed or buried. She requested a supplemental report sent to FBI Pittsburgh and the Cold Case Division. Evidence recovered from vehicle CF219, 3 human remains confirmed. Cause of death: gunshot wounds at close range. Evidence suggests homicide. On March 22nd, she and the forensics team returned to Clearfield Reservoir to finalize the scene. The water level was now held low, clearly revealing skid marks from the steep bank to the vehicle's position. About 12 meters long, with parallel tire tracks of uniform compression depth, indicating the vehicle was pushed with force rather than driving naturally. Mendez remeasured the slope and confirmed, vehicle descended in a controlled manner, likely towed or pushed by another vehicle. Reed silently noted, pushed down, not accident. As dusk fell, she stood at the lake edge, watching the lights reflect on the water streaked red by sunset. A cold wind blew, carrying the smell of mud and metal. Before her was the end of 3 lives, but also the start of a new investigation. In her duty log, the final entry for March 22 was written in neat handwriting. Vehicle CF-219 processed. Victims identified: Evan Carver, Darrell Lawson, Mike Jensen. Cause of death: gunshot at close range. Case #PA9544, officially classified as homicide. On March 23, 2016, just 1 day after the forensics results confirmed the 3 Lockhaven victims died from close-range gunshot wounds, Special Agent Eleanor Reed immediately transferred all evidence recovered from the vehicle, including the .38 special casing labeled CF1 and the deformed bullet recovered from a victim's bones, to the Central Pennsylvania State Ballistics Lab in Harrisburg. This laboratory had digital comparison microscopes and access to NBIN, which stores millions of bullet and casing markings nationwide. Under the supervision of Senior Ballistics Examiner Thomas Rourke, testing began on the morning of March 24. Rourke carefully cleaned the samples, used an electron microscope to scan the casing and bullet surfaces, capturing 3D images of firing pin impressions, rifling marks and breech scratches. When the images appeared on screen, the 4-groove right twist rifling was clear, characteristic of the Smith & Wesson Model 10. He entered the data into NBIN, limiting the search to Pennsylvania records. The system took nearly 2 hours to process, then pinged with a match. The text on screen made Rourke read it twice. Possible match. NBIN record #PA03LIS17, firearm Smith & Wesson .38 revolver, confiscated Lycoming County, March 2003, owner Raymond Cole. It was the exact sample Agent Reed had referenced in her reopening report. The technical details: elliptical left offset firing pin impression, 0.09-inch spacing, matched perfectly with the casing from the victim's vehicle. Rourke printed comparison photos, marking matching points: 5 lateral skid marks, 3 rifling lands at 11, 2 5 o'clock positions. The match probability was over 98%, ranked by the system as confirmed match pending verification. When the results reached the FBI Pittsburgh office at 5:40 p.m. that day, Reed was in a meeting with the forensics team. She paused upon seeing the email: NBIN correlation complete. CF1 casing from vehicle CF219 matches, firearm #PA03LIS17. She read it slowly, printed 3 copies, and distributed them to colleagues. In the silent room, Dr. Mendez quietly said, "So his gun killed them." Reed did not reply, only nodded slightly. She knew direct comparison was needed for official conclusion, but NBIN was rarely wrong at this level. The next morning, March 25, Reed personally went to the ballistics lab to witness the final comparison. Rourke placed the 2 casings under a dual microscope, CF1 from the victim's vehicle, and the reference from the 2003 test fire of Cole's confiscated Smith & Wesson. On screen, the bright and dark rifling lines overlapped almost perfectly. He turned and said, "No doubt, same gun." Both bullets bear the unique firing pin mark of an old Model 10, with wear on the second land, exact match to Cole's seized revolver. The official report was completed that afternoon, signed by Rourke and the lab director. Result: positive identification. Casing CF1 from Clearfield vehicle matched to firearm Smith & Wesson .38, serial 8, K62149, confiscated 2003. Reed took the printed report back to the office, carefully filing it in Project Lost Voices, case #PA9544. She added a short note in her notebook: NBIN match confirmed, Cole's revolver =murder weapon. For legal assurance, she called state police to recheck the gun's status, still in sealed storage at Lycoming. They confirmed it intact. Reed immediately requested a federal warrant for temporary seizure for cross-jurisdictional comparison. That evening, in the lit office, she spread all documents on the desk: 1995 ballistics report, 2003 seizure record, and 2016 confirmation. 3 timelines spanning over 20 years closed into a complete circle, all revolving around one man, Raymond Cole, hunting camp owner, last witness, and now owner of the gun that killed the 3 missing young men. Reed looked at the Pine Hollow map on the wall, then wrote in her duty log, the final entry for March 25, 2016. Bullet from Clearfield vehicle matches Cole's Smith & Wesson .38. 100% probability match. This is no longer hypothesis, this is fact. On March 28, 2016, 3 days after ballistics confirmed Raymond Cole's Smith & Wesson .38 matched the bullet from the victim's vehicle. Special Agent Eleanor Reed received notification from the FBI DNA lab at Quantico regarding sample code PA95C. The hair strand discovered in 2005 in the Lock Haven cold case file. That hair, sealed for over 20 years, had been sent to the lab as soon as Project Lost Voices began. The preliminary report showed the hair had an intact root, sufficient for nuclear DNA extraction, allowing analysis via modern mitochondrial DNA and STR techniques, technology unavailable in the 1990s. The testing took 5 days, in 3 phases: extraction, amplification, and comparison to the National CODIS database. When Reed opened the results email, the bold subject line took her breath away. Match found, sample PA95C. The 8-page report detailed every step. The hair contained male nuclear DNA, with a complete sequence 99.99%, matching a reference profile in the U.S. military database, specifically that of Raymond E. Cole, born 1945, Army veteran, who served in Vietnam, discharged 1972. The STR match covered all 13 loci perfectly, while mitochondrial data showed 99.997% similarity above legal threshold. The conclusion in bold at the end: DNA from hair sample PA95C matches the mitochondrial and nuclear DNA profile of subject Raymond E. Cole. Probability of random match, 1 in 14 billion. Reed sat staring at the number, a chill running down her spine. The hair found on the Pine Hollow Creek bank, near the 1995 keychain discovery site, belonged to the same man who owned the murder weapon. She printed the report, placed it beside the ballistics file, and circled Cole's name in red on both. Simultaneously, she contacted the state cold case office to confirm legal process, requesting original military records and biological identity confirmation from the Department of Defense. 3 days later, the files arrived in the military DNA registry. Raymond Cole had provided a sample in 1991 during a veteran data update. The sequence matched PA95C perfectly. No doubt remained. Cole had been physically present at Pine Hollow on the night of July 29, 1995. Reed reviewed the map again, pointing to marker post 17, where the hair was found, less than a quarter mile from the Pine Hollow slope. This meant not only was his gun used to kill the 3 men, but he was directly at the site where the victims vanished. She noted, Cole DNA at Pine Hollow equals sign presence confirmed. Evidence chain complete. That afternoon, Reed called an emergency meeting at the FBI Pittsburgh office. The entire Project Lost Voices team attended, along with state police representatives and legal counsel. On the screen, she presented the 3-layer evidence chain in a firm voice: ballistics same Smith & Wesson .38, DNA, hair matches Cole, scenes, Pine Hollow, Clearfield, Lock Haven, victims, confirmed death by close-range gunshot. When the final slide appeared, the room fell silent. Project Coordinator, Senior Agent Alan Brewer, spoke after a pause. We have full scientific grounds to reopen the file and shift to criminal investigation. Reed nodded, knowing the physical evidence chain was now closed. Every question from 21 years ago, the gun, the hunting camp, the casings, the hair, all pointed to one name. After the meeting, she returned to her desk and reopened Sheriff Hale's 1995 file. Among the yellowed pages, a faint handwritten line was still legible. If Cole was there, he wasn't just a witness. Reed gently touched the words as a belated confirmation for the man long gone. Outside the window, Pittsburgh was under a light rain, reflecting dim light on the whiteboard dense with red arrows. At the bottom, on the Pennsylvania map, she added one final line, PA 95, C =sign DNA match. Raymond Cole present at crime scene. Initiate full criminal investigation. On April 1, 2016, less than a week after the DNA results confirmed that hair sample PA95C matched Raymond Cole's biological profile, Special Agent Eleanor Reed began reviewing off-scene data to strengthen the financial evidence chain. In a murder case involving robbery, money is the final thread connecting motive to action. She sent an official request to Williamsport Savings and Trust Bank, where Cole had declared a personal account in his 1994 tax filings, asking for transaction history from June to September 1995. 2 days later, the bank's legal department responded with a digitized set of old microfilm data, including all records of cash transactions, checks, and deposits during that period. Reed and FBI financial specialist Thomas Garland began examining each line entry. For nearly 3 months, most of Cole's transactions were minor fluctuations, gas sales revenue, oil purchase expenses, tax payments, with balances hovering around $3,000. But one entry stood out, August 1, 1995. A cash deposit of $12,000 USD, clearly noted in handwriting as cash deposit, teller code #17. Garland paused, raised an eyebrow, then cross-referenced the data with the Clinton Savings and Loan Bank robbery case. The total amount stolen was exactly $12,000 USD, mostly in $20 and $50 bills. Reed requested the bank to print a copy of the deposit slip. The paper was faded but still clearly showed the scrawled signature, Re. Cole. The right corner bore the teller's verification stamp. When cross-checking with that year's tax report, she discovered Cole had not declared any corresponding income. No sales invoices, no legitimate source for this money. She noted in her log, January 8, 95, cash deposit matching robbery amount, no reasonable source. To bolster this, Reed sent a request to the Internal Revenue Service for access to Cole's 1995-1996 income reporting data. The results showed his total declared income was only $18,400 USD, entirely from gas station operations. No entry mentioned the large sum. Thus, the August 1 deposit could not have come from a legitimate source. Reed and Garland continued expanding the query, searching for linked accounts or other suspicious transaction. In the 3 years following the disappearance, Cole made no additional large cash deposits, as if someone had spent a sudden windfall and then returned to old habits. She asked the bank to verify the real-time details of the deposit slip based on internal transaction logs. The handwritten notes from the teller at the time, Jeanette Rowe, clearly stated, "Customer arrived at counter at 9:42 a.m., carrying a stack of bills bundled with rubber bands, requested deposit into personal account, no check exchange." When asked about source, he said savings from a long time. This report was stored in employee files and fortunately still had a microfilm copy. Upon reading the description, stack of bills bundled with rubber bands, Reed recalled Sheriff Hale's 1995 report. The money stolen from Clinton Savings and Loan was described by witnesses as 3 stacks of $20 and $50 bills, bundled with red rubber bands. Every detail matched almost perfectly. That afternoon, she drafted a financial summary to send to FBI headquarters in Pittsburgh, marking it as critical evidence. In the report, she wrote, "Analysis of Williamsport Savings and Trust account shows Raymond Cole deposited $12,000 in cash on August 1, 1995. Exactly matching amount stolen from Clinton Savings and Loan Bank on July 29, 1995. No documented source of income or explanation." At the same time, she contacted former teller Jeanette Rowe, now retired and living in Bellefonte. The 15-minute call yielded clear recollections. He brought the money in a cloth bag, looked tense, hands stained with oil, like he'd just been working in the shop. I thought it strange, because he rarely deposited that much. Reed recorded every word, and requested Rowe sign a voluntary statement. In the file, the financial evidence now stood out as a direct link connecting the bank robbery to Cole. The timeline also aligned perfectly. July 29th robbery. That night the three young men disappeared, and just 3 days later, August 1st, Cole deposited the exact amount into his account. Reed sat in her office, spreading out 3 case files before her. Ballistics results, DNA report, and now financial data. Each document was a separate arrow, but all pointing to the same target. She wrote on the whiteboard, "Gun DNA money =" Cole." Below the line she added, $12,000 deposit =" financial motive, plus post-event evidence. As night fell over Pittsburgh, she opened her personal notebook, writing in small firm letters, "Financial chain established. Robbery money Cole." No longer a hypothesis. Then she closed the notebook and placed it beside 3 sealed envelopes, labeled NI bin match, DNA PA 95, C, and financial record. January 8, 95, 3 complete pieces for a case, forgotten for 21 years. On April 6, 2016, after completing the financial analysis, proving Raymond Cole deposited $12,000 in cash, matching the amount stolen, 3 days after the disappearance. Special Agent Eleanor Reed shifted focus to re-examining the 1995 witness statements to find human elements supporting the physical evidence chain. She started with the list of 2 witnesses originally recorded by Sheriff Thomas Hale. Harold Kemp, a machinist living near the edge of Ferensville Forest, and Martha Allen, the elderly woman who reported hearing sounds like gunshots on the night of July 29th. Both had stated they heard metallic clangs and echoes from the Pine Hollow area, but their statements were not further corroborated due to lack of specific evidence. Hale also noted that after the initial interviews, both refused further cooperation and didn't want to get involved anymore. Reed reviewed the old addresses, then traced them through Pennsylvania residency records. Harold Kemp still lived in the same Ferensville area, now 59 years old, while Martha Allen had moved to live with her daughter in Bellefonte, about 40 miles from Lock Haven. On April 8, Reed and Assistant Agent David Ellis visited Kemp at his home, a small wooden house midway up the hill, still overlooking Teodaden Forest. The thin, gray-haired man greeted them warily. When Reed introduced herself as a federal agent handling Project Lost Voices, he stood silent for a moment, then softly said, "I knew this day would come eventually." She opened her notebook and asked again about the night of July 29, 1995. Kemp recounted slowly, "That evening around 10:30, I was on the porch, heard 2 bangs. Not loud but echoing. Thought someone was night hunting, but the next morning seeing police cars everywhere, I realized people were missing." Reed asked why he did not provide further testimony during the investigation. Kemp hesitated, eyes downcast, "Because I was threatened." He explained that 2 days after giving his statement, he received a call from a man identifying himself as Raymond Cole, the gas station owner. The voice was low and gravelly, saying briefly, "Don't mention that night again if you don't want trouble." At the time, Kemp thought it was just an empty warning, but 2 weeks later, returning home, he found his chicken coop broken into, 2 dogs severely beaten. Nothing stolen, just fear instilled. He understood the message and stayed silent thereafter. Reed asked why he did not report it to police. Kemp shook his head. "In a small town, everyone knew Cole. I didn't want trouble." She requested he sign a new statement detailing the call and incident. He agreed, hand shaking as he signed. The next day, Reed and Ellis went to Bellefonte to meet Martha Allen, now in her 70s, living in a quiet nursing home. She was still sharp and immediately recognized the case when Reed introduced it. "The 3 young boys who went missing, right? I still remember," she said slowly. Reed asked again about July 29th. She recounted living in a wooden house near Pine Hollow Road, about a mile from Cole's service station. "Around nearly 11 o'clock, I heard gunshots, 2 shots, then engine revving, seemed like 2 vehicles, one heavy sound, one lighter. I went out on the porch, but only saw headlights flashing through the trees. The next day, when police came asking, she told them exactly that, but a few days later, Raymond Cole came to her house. He said, "I must have misheard, that it was just someone target shooting that night." Then he said, half jokingly, half seriously, "It's peaceful here. Best to leave things alone, Mrs. Allen." She found it odd, since he wasn't an acquaintance, but his tone scared her. Afterward, she moved away from Pine Hollow and never returned. Reed asked if she was willing to sign a new statement. She nodded, saying, "I'm old now, not afraid of anyone anymore." With both statements completed, Reed filed them into the Lockhaven case, marking Re-Interview 2016, corroboration. She knew this was the human evidence the case had lacked for 21 years, direct confirmation that Raymond Cole was not only present near the scene, but deliberately intimidated witnesses to cover up the gunfire that night. On the drive back to Pittsburgh, Reed sat quietly, watching the green forest pass by the window, mentally connecting the data, bullets, DNA, money, and now witnesses, all converging on the same moment, the same person. That evening, she opened her computer and typed the conclusion in the report to superiors. Both original witnesses confirm intimidation by Raymond Cole in 1995. Threats consistent with concealment of gunfire at Pine Hollow. Testimonies support his presence and knowledge of crime. After hitting send, Reed leaned back in her chair, looking out the dark window, only distant lights reflecting on the desk where 4 stacked files had restored the voices of 3 young men forgotten for over 20 years. On April 10, 2016, after completing the re-interviews of the 2 original witnesses, Special Agent Eleanor Reed proceeded to the final phase of physical analysis, reconstructing the Pine Hollow scene, using a 3-dimensional terrain model to determine the mechanism that caused the victim's Chevrolet Nova to plunge into Clearfield Lake. Joining her were field engineer Samuel Ortiz from the Federal Forensic Center and the FBI Digital Technical Team. They used the latest LiDAR terrain data provided by the U.S. Geological Survey, combined with satellite imagery and coordinates from Sheriff Thomas Hale's 1995 report. Old markers were precisely repositioned: the Pine Hollow turn, the 11-degree slope, the shallow creek area, and the lake edge where the vehicle was found. Ortiz processed all data through Reconstructor 3D terrain simulation software, creating a digital model accurate to the centimeter. As the image appeared on the large screen in the tech room, Reed stood beside watching, the gray-green slopes clearly rendered like a stereoscopic painting. The team simulated the Nova's path based on its original 2 800-pound weight, terrain incline, and gravel road structure. When inputting an average speed of 25 miles per hour, the software calculated that the car could not have reached the discovered depth on its own. The slope and friction were insufficient for inertial force. To reach the depth where it was found, an additional pulling or pushing force from another vehicle with at least 180 horsepower, large tires, and off-road capability was required. Ortiz paused the simulation, looking at Reed. In other words, the car was pushed, not a natural fall. She requested rerunning the model with an alternative hypothesis if the car was towed by cable. When inputting pull force equivalent to a 1994 Jeep Wrangler 4.0L, the results matched the actual trajectory almost perfectly: 12-meter skid, 10.8-degree descent, stopping exactly at the excavation point. Mud friction marks matched parallel ruts photographed at Clearfield. All parameters closed. Reed requested the technical report export, noting, vehicle CF219 displaced intentionally. Required torque consistent with 4x4 vehicle class. Ortiz printed the summary with simulation graphics. 3D images showing the Nova pushed from behind by a high-power vehicle, nose-diving down the slope, sinking into the lake in under 10 seconds. As the simulated light reflected on the screen, Reed stood silent. Each red arrow, each vector line affirmed what Sheriff Hale had suspected but could not prove: the car was deliberately pushed into the lake. She ordered further queries on vehicles capable of this. From Pennsylvania Vehicle Registration Database, the tech team found Raymond Cole, owned a 1994 Jeep Wrangler, registered March 12, 1994, dark green, license plate PA 4H1627. Valid inspection until 2003. The same year his .38 revolver was seized. Reed typed each line, cross-checking timelines. Same person, same off-road vehicle type, sufficient power and weight to push the Nova. She requested archived 1995 satellite images of the Susquehanna watershed, low-resolution monitoring shots. After enhancing contrast, specialists detected faint traces in the Pine Hollow area of two parallel tire tracks extending to the lake edge. Wheelbase width 60 inches, exactly matching Jeep Wrangler specs. Reed nearly held her breath, viewing the enlargement. Those faint ruts, for 21 years, had lain there under soil and grass. She turned to Ortiz, voice firm. "We need physical verification." The next day, she and the tech team returned to the scene with ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and printed 3D maps. At the Pine Hollow slope, they measured two hardened ruts beneath the surface, 60 inches apart, 3 inches deep, exactly matching the simulated trajectory. Mud inside contained iron oxide traces, indicating compression by metal tires. Soil samples were collected and sealed. Ortiz signed off. Ruts matched Jeep 4 size. Evidence of vehicle stopping, then pushing another object. Back in the Pittsburgh office, Reed compiled all data into a 52-page report, attaching 3D simulation graphics and satellite photos. She concluded in the summary, reconstruction indicates Chevrolet Nova was intentionally pushed into Clearfield Lake by a high-torque vehicle. Physical evidence and spatial parameters match 1994 Jeep Wrangler, owned by Raymond Cole. Finally, she stood before the whiteboard, viewing the red line, gun DNA, money witness vehicle. She circled vehicle, then added below, Cole's Jeep, force vector confirmed. Outside, spring rain fell steadily on the office roof. In the dim light, the 3D screen still displayed the dark green vehicle sliding down the slope, its shadow vanishing into the dark lake. A perfect reconstruction of a summer night in 1995, when all traces seemed erased. On April 15, 2016, after more than a month of review and comprehensive reinvestigation, Special Agent Eleanor Reed completed a nearly 80-page evidence synthesis, including all DNA, ballistics, financial, witness statement, and 3D scene reconstruction results. In the report, she clearly presented the undeniable legal chain linking Raymond Cole to the 1995 Lockhaven case. Hair sample PA95, C matching Cole's DNA. .38 casings recovered from the victim's vehicle, matching his seized Smith & Wesson, the $12,000 USD cash deposit into his personal account. Just 3 days after the Clinton savings and loan bank robbery, plus 2 witness statements confirming intimidation by Cole to silence them about the gunfire on the disappearance night. Additionally, the 3D simulation technical report proved the Chevrolet Nova did not fall into the lake by accident, but was deliberately pushed by a 4 vehicle, with size and pull force perfectly matching Cole's 1994 Jeep Wrangler. Reed and the FBI Pittsburgh legal team spent 2 days finalizing the search warrant application, including evidence summary, scene diagrams, witness statements, and a request specifying scope, covering the residence, hunting camp, and all adjacent land owned by Raymond Cole in Ferensville, Clinton County. She knew this was the most critical step. All prior physical evidence was collected in public areas, but to advance further required county court approval. On April 18, Reed and federal prosecutor David Monroe presented the file at Clinton County Court. In the small second-floor courtroom, Judge Harold D. Whitmore, who had worked with Thomas Hale years earlier, personally reviewed it. Reed presented the evidence framework, voice calm but resolute, each piece connecting across 2 decades of investigation. She began with the DNA chain, hair sample PA95, C. Collected at Pine Hollow in 1995, matches 99.99% with Raymond Cole's military profile, confirming his presence at the scene. Next, ballistics, projecting images of casing CF1 matching the 2003 C's Smith & Wesson .38, citing NIBIN 100% probability. Then financial evidence, copy of the $12,000 USD cash deposit slip from August 1, 1995, with teller Jeanette Rowe's statement, and finally, the accounts from witnesses Harold Kemp and Martha Allen about Cole's intimidation after hearing gunfire. The presentation ended with the 3D video simulation reconstructing Pine Hollow, the Nova pushed down the slope by a Jeep, rolling along the trail then sinking into the lake. Blue-green light reflected on the screen, leaving the room utterly silent. As the video ended, Reed said softly, "All this evidence, taken separately, may not suffice, but together they form a closed chain of cause, action, consequence. We believe Raymond Cole is responsible for the deaths of Evan Carver, Darrell Lawson, and Mike Jensen, and directly involved in the July 29, 1995 afternoon robbery of Clinton Savings and Loan Bank." Judge Whitmore flipped through each page, expression grave. He asked briefly about evidence legality and chain of custody. Reed replied, "All were properly sealed and stored continuously since 1995. After over 40 minutes, he set down his pen, signed the warrant, voice low, "Warrant approved. Execute per standard procedure, keep media away." Reed nodded thanks, gripping the document tightly. In the courthouse hallway, Monroe whispered, 21 years for one signature. She only replied, "One signature, but it's justice." Search warrant number CC 2016-1187 was officially issued that afternoon, specifying scope: Raymond Cole's residence in Ferensville, the entire Pine Hollow hunting camp, and 2 auxiliary sheds. By evening, Reed faxed notification to state police and local SWAT for coordination. She stood by her Pittsburgh office window, watching fine rain through the glass. Under the yellow light, the warrant on the desk reflected cold steel. She opened her notebook, writing briefly, 15, the 18th of April 2016, full evidence synthesis. Search warrant approved. Target: Ferensville, Cole residence. In the early morning of May 4, 2017, after nearly 3 weeks of logistical preparation and safety procedure verification, search warrant number CC 2016-1187 was officially executed at Raymond Cole's log cabin in Ferensville. The sky was still misty, the temperature just over 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the dirt road leading to the property was damp and slippery after the overnight rain. Special Agent Eleanor Reed directly commanded the operation alongside the Pennsylvania State Police SWAT team, with the participation of 2 forensic investigators and federal prosecutor David Monroe supervising the procedures. At 5:42 a.m., the convoy consisting of 3 police vehicles and 1 technical van stopped in front of the hunting camp gate. The log cabin was still dark, with only a faint light flickering from the kitchen. According to the plan, the SWAT team approached, knocked on the door, and read the warrant. Cole, 71 years old, opened the door wearing an old jacket, limping, with a sun-tanned and weary face. Reed stepped forward, held up the search warrant signed by Judge Whitmore, and clearly read the terms and the owner's rights. He remained silent, his eyes glancing briefly at the technical team entering. The search began at 5:58 a.m., divided into 3 areas: the main house, the shed behind it, and the old hunting camp in the woods, nearly 300 meters away. The first team, led by Reed, inspected the living room, kitchen, and bedroom. The air was thick with a musty smell, mixed with machine oil. On the wooden table near the window was a stack of old newspapers, a few empty beer cans, and a brown leather notebook. Reed opened the notebook and saw messy handwritten notes with scattered dates. When flipping near the end, she paused. The page for July 29, 95 had a pencil entry: 3 guests arrived at 10:30. There were no entries after that. She signaled the technician to photograph it and seal the notebook in an evidence bag labeled Exhibit 27C. In the old wardrobe in the bedroom, the technician discovered a nylon bag hanging in the bottom corner, containing a long golden fiber object, a women's synthetic blonde wig that had faded in color. Reed immediately recognized it matched the characteristics of the wig recovered from the victim's car at Clearfield Lake. Next to it was a dark blue cotton dress, old and with a tear on the side. Both items were sealed separately, labeled Exhibit 27A and Exhibit 27B. The forensic team used ultraviolet light to scan the bedroom floor and detected a faint fluorescent area at the foot of the bed. When lightly scraping the dust layer, they revealed a dark brown streak stuck to the wooden floor, suspected to be dried blood. Mendez, the accompanying forensic specialist, used a sterile swab to collect the sample, placed it in a container, and sealed it as sample 27M1. Everything was continuously recorded to ensure the chain of custody. In the kitchen, the support team checked the wooden cabinets and under the table, finding a box of .38 special ammunition with 7 rounds remaining, the same type used in the crime. Cole, meanwhile, sat silently on the sofa, hands clasped together, staring blankly. When Reed asked if he had any explanation for the items just found, he only said softly, "Old stuff from before, I don't remember anymore." She did not respond, and continued ordering the search of the shed behind the house. There, amid hunting gear and toolboxes, the technician discovered a 12-foot steel cable with a hook on one end and iron abrasion marks on the surface. The item was believed to be usable as a tow cable. They documented it, photographed it, and sealed it under Exhibit 27D. While the forensic team measured and numbered the scene, Reed used her phone to call the FBI Pittsburgh headquarters for a direct report. Search warrant completed initial phase. Recovered blonde wig, dress, notebook with July 29, 95, 3 guests, dried blood sample, and steel cable, suspected as tow cable. Homeowner cooperative, not yet detained. By 9 a.m., the entire property had been thoroughly searched. A total of 17 evidence items were collected and packed in sealed containers. The blood sample was immediately sent via cold transport to the Pennsylvania State Forensic Laboratory in Harrisburg for DNA analysis. The preliminary on-scene report noted, dried blood trace, area 7 by 10 centimeters, location southwest corner of bedroom, source undetermined. Before leaving, Reed signed the handover protocol, confirming that Cole had been fully read his legal rights and showed no resistance. As she stepped onto the porch, faint sunlight pierced through the thick mist, shining on the neatly stacked evidence bags in the steel containers. She looked around the quiet forest, hearing the distant sound of Pine Hollow Creek echoing, a sound eerily reminiscent of the summer night 21 years earlier. As the convoy left Ferensville, Reed opened her notebook and wrote the final entry for May 4, 2017. Search warrant executed. Evidence collected, blonde wig, blue dress, notebook July 29, 95, 3 guests, dried blood sample. Blood sample dispatched to Harrisburg lab. Subject, Raymond Cole, cooperative. Investigation proceeding. On May 18, 2017, 2 weeks after the search warrant on Raymond Cole was executed, the forensic examination results for blood sample 27M1 were sent from the Harrisburg State Laboratory to the FBI Pittsburgh office. The report was 14 pages thick, stamped, Confidential Forensic Biology Unit. Special Agent Eleanor Reed opened the envelope right at her desk. Inside was a summary of the DNA results with a genetic marker comparison table. According to the report, the dried blood sample collected from the bedroom floor in Cole's house contained a complete male genetic profile and was compared to the CODIS database entries for the Lock Haven victims. The bolded result at the bottom of page 3 stated, DNA profile, full match to reference sample #CF16A, probability of random match, 1 in 9.6 billion. Reed read it 3 times to be sure, then gently folded the paper and set it down. There was no doubt left. The blood streak found on Cole's bedroom floor belonged to Evan Carver, the primary victim in the 1995 disappearance case. The DNA sample fully matched the genetic sequence previously identified, from Carver's bones recovered from the car under Clearfield Lake. The report also noted that the dried blood had formed on natural wood, deeply penetrating the grain, indicating the spatter or impact occurred on site, not a secondary transfer. The deformed hemoglobin crystals suggested the blood was over 2 decades old, consistent with the time of the homicide. In the expert comments section, the lab director wrote, "Given degradation pattern and embedded fiber, blood likely originated from a high-velocity impact spatter event." The short description was heavy enough for Reed to understand that Carver had sustained a fatal injury in that room before the Chevrolet Nova was pushed into the lake. She called Dr. Harold Mendez, head of forensics, to confirm the timeline compatibility. Mendez affirmed, "This blood sample is old, but the protein degradation and oxidation pattern match a 25-year-old sample. I can confidently say this is Carver's blood, left from the night of July 29, 1995. Reed noted his words in her log. Evan Carver present inside Cole residence prior to homicide. That same day, she held an internal meeting with prosecutor Monroe, ballistics expert Rourke, and scene engineer Ortiz. On the board, Reed pinned a map of Pine Hollow and a diagram of Cole's house, using red string to connect the blood location to the slope where the car was pushed into the lake. She spoke slowly. "We have established the victim's final movement chain. Carver was shot in the house, blood spattered on the floor. The other two may have been subdued or killed at the same time. Then the bodies and car were taken to Clearfield Lake." Monroe asked, "Are you sure he didn't just help hide the car?" Reed replied firmly, "No, the blood DNA shows Carver was inside the house before death. That places Cole directly at the murder scene." In the report sent to FBI headquarters, she wrote, "Blood sample 27M1 from Cole residence matched victim Evan Carver. Scene analysis supports that victim sustained fatal injury inside premises. Cole's residence established as primary homicide scene." That afternoon, the technical team returned to Forensville for additional infrared imaging of the scene, confirming the blood trace embedded 2 millimeters deep into the floor grain. As the laser light scanned, tiny glowing specks scattered across the southwest bedroom corner, forming a curved streak, characteristic of high-velocity spatter. Mendez tilted his head and said softly, "Spatter from a low posture, knee level to the victim, directed toward the bed." He marked the direction on the diagram. Reed stood near the window, watching the blue flickering light on the wood, quietly saying, 21 years, and he still left the trace in this very room. As the team left, she took copies of the floor sample and scene photos for the file. In the car, Monroe looked at her and said softly, "Now we have blood DNA, money witnesses. Everything fits, Eleanor." She only replied, "Not yet. We still need a confession or proof of vehicle movement." But certainty was clear in her eyes. That evening, in the lit office of FBI Pittsburgh, Reed placed the Harrisburg report next to the thick case file. The bolded words, "DNA match, Evan Carver," reflected under the desk lamp. She added a single line to her duty log. May 18, 2017. Blood from Cole residence confirmed as belonging to Evan Carver. Victim proven to be inside before murder. Homicide link established. On May 22, 2017. 4 days after the blood examination results confirmed a DNA match with victim Evan Carver, Special Agent Eleanor Reed and federal prosecutor David Monroe decided to summon Raymond Cole to the state police headquarters in Lock Haven for a formal criminal interrogation. The summons was sent early that morning, and Cole appeared at 9:15 a.m., led into interrogation room number 2, a small room with light gray walls, a metal table, and 2 facing chairs. Reed clearly stated his legal rights, read the Miranda warnings, and asked if he wanted legal representation. Cole, looking weary with deep-set eyes, just shook his head. "No need, I have nothing to say." The interrogation began. Reed opened the thick case file, laying out the documents in a row, photos of shell casing CF1, Enbin report, DNA results from hair sample PA95C, copy of the $12,000 deposit slip, dated August 1, 1995, and photos of the blood streak and bedroom floor. Her voice was low and deliberate. "Mr. Cole, we have all the physical evidence linking you to the disappearance and murder of the 3 Lock Haven youths in 1995. The shell casing found in the victim's car matches perfectly with the Smith & Wesson .38 you owned, seized in 2003. DNA from hair recovered at Pine Hollow matches your biological profile, confirming your presence at the scene. The $12,000 you deposited in the Williamsport Bank 3 days after the Clinton savings and loan bank robbery matches exactly the amount stolen. And finally, Evan Carver's blood was found on your floor." Cole looked down at the table, his veined hands clasped, silent. Reed waited a few seconds, then continued, her voice firmer. "You threatened Harold Kemp and Martha Allen not to talk about the gunshots that night. They have both signed statements. We have everything, Mr. Cole. What I want to hear from you now is the truth." He looked up, eyes dull, and said hoarsely, "I don't know anything about it. I didn't shoot anyone, didn't threaten anyone. You just want to close an old case, so you're coming after me." Reed opened the scene photos folder, flipped to the tire tracks at Pine Hollow and the 3D model, and pushed them toward him. The victim's car was pushed into the lake by a Jeep Wrangler, the same model you registered in 1994. The track width matches, the trajectory matches. Everything points to the same place. Cole gave a faint, trembling smile. "All Jeeps are alike. Who can prove it was mine?" She did not answer, just opened the DNA report next, pointing to the bolded line DNA profile match, Raymond E. Cole. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. Monroe, sitting beside her, said quietly, "Mr. Cole, we're giving you a chance to explain. If this was an accident, or someone else was involved, say it now." He looked up at the wall where the clock ticked slowly, then said softly, 20 years, you don't understand anything." Then he closed his mouth, staring into space. Reed asked 3 more times, each met with silence. When she recounted the timeline, 10:30 p.m., the victims left his gas station, 10:47 p.m. gunshots from Pine Hollow, 11 p.m. He reported hearing strange noises. Cole showed no reaction. When she placed the notebook found in his house, open to the page, July 29, 95, 3 guests, he glanced at it, then turned away, lips pressed tight. Reed asked, "Who were these 3 people?" He did not answer. She changed approach, voice lower. "You've lived with this for 21 years, you can stay silent here, but the evidence will speak for you. DNA, ballistics, money, statements, everything points to you." After nearly 2 hours, Cole maintained his stance, refusing to sign the transcript or admit anything. The public defender called in at the end, noted he refused to answer all questions related to the 1995 Lock Haven case. Reed looked at him one last time before standing and gathering the file. "Silence is also an answer, Mr. Cole." The interrogation ended at 11:45 a.m. In the report sent to the Pittsburgh office that afternoon, she wrote, "Subject Raymond Cole interviewed under Miranda. Presented all physical, ballistic, financial and testimonial evidence. Subject refused to cooperate. Invoked right to silence." Case materials transferred to U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution review. As she left the interrogation room, Reed paused in the hallway, looking through the glass at the old man slumped over, hands on his knees, white light casting his shadow long on the gray tile floor. After 21 years, the circle closed. The one who was once the last witness had become the sole suspect. In the morning of June 5, 2017, nearly 3 weeks after the unsuccessful interrogation, arrest warrant AR 2017-512, Commonwealth v. Cole was approved by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Pennsylvania State Prosecutor's Office based on all authenticated physical, ballistic, financial, DNA, and witness evidence. The warrant specified emergency arrest and prosecution on 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of armed robbery, and 1 count of evidence tampering related to the 1995 Lock Haven case. At 6:10 a.m., Special Agent Eleanor Reed and the state police team executed the warrant at Cole's residence in Ferensville. The quiet log cabin in the misty forest, once the crime scene, now became the endpoint of the 21-year investigation. The SWAT team surrounded the area within a 100-meter radius, blocking all access, while Reed and Lieutenant Donahue approached the porch, knocked, and read the warrant. There was no response from inside. After 3 warnings, the door opened slightly. Cole appeared wearing a gray sweater, holding a coffee mug. He looked around, eyes weary, then set the mug down and extended his hands without a word. Reed read clearly. Raymond Edward Cole, you are under arrest for the murders of Evan Carver, Darrell Lawson, and Mike Jensen on July 29, 1995, along with charges of armed robbery and evidence tampering. You have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. Cole showed no reaction, just nodded slightly as police handcuffed him. As he was led to the car, early sunlight fell on his wrinkled face, expressionless, eyes blankly gazing toward distant Pine Hollow forest. Reed stood watching, feeling a mix of relief and heaviness. 21 years, and the final pieces had come together. The convoy left Ferensville at 6:35 a.m., taking Cole to Clinton County Detention Center. That same morning, Prosecutor Monroe held a brief press conference at the county courthouse, confirming the arrest of the suspect in the 1995 Lock Haven case, once considered unsolvable. He stated, Raymond E. Cole is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of armed robbery, and 1 count of evidence tampering. DNA, ballistic and financial evidence have confirmed his direct link to the crime scene. Behind the podium, Reed stood silently, saying nothing, just observing the media filming. Questions poured in, but Monroe answered briefly, we will let the court decide. But for the first time in 21 years, the victims and their families have a chance to hear the truth. That afternoon, Cole was brought to the initial hearing at Clinton County Courthouse, under heavy security. He sat with head bowed, wearing an orange jumpsuit, eyes vacant, silent as the judge read the charges. The prosecution formally stated the charges: 3 counts of first-degree murder, under Pennsylvania Penal Code Section 2502, 1 count of armed robbery, under Section 3701, 1I, and 1 count of evidence tampering, under Section 4910. Evidence listed in the indictment included DNA results from hair and blood samples matching Cole and victim Carver, 38 casings matching Cole's own Smith & Wesson, 3D modeling, proving the victim's car was pushed into the lake by a 4x4 vehicle, matching Cole's Jeep Wrangler specifications, and financial evidence of the $12,000 deposit on August 1, 1995. When the judge asked, "Do you plead guilty?" Cole only said hoarsely, "I didn't kill anyone." The public defender requested a bail hearing, but the prosecution opposed, citing the severity of the charges and risk of evidence destruction. Judge Whitmore ruled remand without bail. As police led Cole through the hallway, camera clicks and recording sounds filled the air. Reed stood at the end, watching, neither joyful nor angry, just the silence of someone witnessing justice returning to its path. That evening, in the Pittsburgh office, she wrote the summary report to June 5, 2017. Arrest executed under warrant AR 2017-512. Raymond E. Cole charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of armed robbery, 1 count of evidence tampering. Case transferred to U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. After 21 years, justice process begins. She folded the file, set it on the desk, and looked out the window where late sunset slowly passed. The Lock Haven case finally had an accused, but Reed knew the road ahead was still long to bring the full truth to light. In October 2017, 4 months after Raymond E. Cole's arrest, the Lock Haven 1995 case was officially brought to trial at the Clinton County Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. Courtroom 1, which had seen hundreds of criminal trials, was packed that day with reporters, locals, and relatives of the 3 victims. In the front row, Evan Carver's mother, Louise, clutched a photo of her son, eyes red. Opposite, Raymond Cole sat between his 2 defense attorneys, wearing a gray shirt, hair white, gaze calm. When Judge Harold D. Whitmore entered and read the charges, the entire courtroom fell silent. 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of armed robbery, and 1 count of evidence tampering. Prosecutor David Monroe opened with a nearly 2-hour presentation, sequentially laying out the chain of physical evidence collected by the FBI and state police over more than 20 years. He began with the ballistics report. The .38 special casing found in the victim's car matched perfectly with Cole's Smith & Wesson, then projected microscopic images for the jury. Next was DNA evidence. Hair recovered at Pine Hollow had a genetic sequence matching 99.99% with Cole's military profile. The dried blood in his bedroom matched fully with victim Evan Carver's DNA. The screen showed close-ups of genetic comparison tables, columns of data irrefutable. Monroe continued with financial evidence, the copy of the $12,000 cash deposit slip, dated August 1, 1995, matching the amount robbed from Clinton Savings and Loan Bank 3 days earlier. Finally, he called witnesses Harold Kemp and Martha Allen. Both, now elderly, walked slowly to the stand and recounted being threatened by Cole, not to mention the gunshots on July 29, 1995. The courtroom was dead silent, as Kemp described the threatening phone call and his 2 dogs severely injured. While Allen spoke shakily but clearly, he told me to forget that night, and I did for 20 years. When the prosecution finished, the jury had seen the entire closed chain of evidence, from scene, items, statements, to money trail. The defense argued the evidence was only circumstantial aggregate, with no direct eyewitness to the killing. But in rebuttal, the prosecution showed a 3D simulation video, reconstructed by the FBI, illustrating the Chevrolet Nova being pushed into Clearfield Lake by a Jeep. Calculated from real scene data, slide trajectory exactly matching Cole's Jeep Wrangler tire marks. The images made many in the room shudder. When Cole was allowed to speak, he stood, hands trembling on the rail, voice weak and hoarse. "I didn't kill anyone. They just want to blame me because I live alone. No one to defend me." No one responded, only the scribbling of the court clerk's pen. The trial lasted 8 days, with over 40 physical exhibits and 13 witnesses presented. On October 18, the 12-member jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and read the verdict. Defendant Raymond Edward Cole is found guilty on all 5 charges. The courtroom fell silent. Then sobs rose from the victims' families' row. Cole sat motionless, staring ahead. Judge Whitmore then sentenced, considering the particularly serious nature of the crime and the prolonged concealment, defendant Raymond E. Cole is sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for each count of first-degree murder, plus 20 years for armed robbery and 10 years for evidence tampering, to be served concurrently. He will serve at Greene County State Prison. As the gavel fell, Reed, seated in the prosecution row, exhaled softly, hand tightly, gripping the pen on her file. 22 years since that summer night in 1995, justice finally had its answer. She looked toward the victim's family's row, where tears fell quietly in relief. After the trial, file #PA 9544, Lock Haven Missing Persons, was officially changed to closed, conviction secured. At the FBI Pittsburgh office, Reed wrote the final line in her duty log. Verdict delivered, life imprisonment without parole. Case closed, after 22 years. She closed the log, looked out the window, outside late autumn. Pennsylvania sky turned silver gray, Pine Hollow forest, still silent, as if holding the breath of the past. But now it no longer hid buried voices. The Lock Haven 1995 case, closing after 22 years, was not only a victory for justice, but also a profound reflection of the value of perseverance, faith in truth, and the power of technology in modern American society. Seemingly minor details, a hair forgotten in storage for 10 years, or a dried blood streak remaining on an old floor, became the keys to solving the case. This shows that in the modern world, Justice comes not just from luck, but from carefulness, science, and unwavering determination. As Special Agent Eleanor Reed did, she did not view the cold case with skepticism, but with a desire to restore voices to the forgotten. In a nation that upholds the rule of law like the United States, this story reminds us that truth does not vanish. It only waits to be seen, something that investigators, journalists, and ordinary citizens can all help restore, as long as they do not turn away from justice. The story also serves as a warning about how society sometimes lets missing persons cases grow cold due to time or prejudice, but with advances in DNA, ballistic databases, or 3D scene reconstruction, no crime can hide forever. On a personal level, the case offers a lesson in civic responsibility, that silence in the face of wrong, as the two threatened witnesses did, only prolongs darkness. America today still needs people willing to speak up, trust the legal process, and act like Eleanor Reed. Not for fame, but for the belief that justice, even if late, is worth waiting for. Thank you for following the over 2-decade journey to solve the Lock Haven 1995 case, where justice finally spoke. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other true crime stories, where the truth always finds its way back to the light.